My mom promised to be my caregiver after major spinal surgery. Instead, I woke up alone in my penthouse to find a sticky note on the fridge saying she went to Aspen. When I called my sister begging for water because I could not move, she laughed over the blasting music and said, "Do not guilt trip us, Tiana. We are here to relax, not to be your servants." I just smiled through the agony and whispered thank you for showing me who you really are. A week later, I made a decision that would leave them homeless. Before I tell you how I turned their cruelty into their eviction, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever been the family bank account only to be overdrawn and discarded. My name is Tiana and I am 35 years old. For the last decade, I have been the chief financial officer of a top private equity firm in Chicago. I wear tailored suits, I command boardrooms, and I sign checks that would make most people dizzy. To the outside world, I am the epitome of Black excellence. The strong, successful woman who made it out of the struggle. But inside the walls of my own family, I am nothing more than a walking ATM machine with a pulse. My mother Loretta loves to tell her church friends how proud she is of her baby girl, but she loves my platinum credit card even more. My younger sister Ebony is 30 years old and calls herself a lifestyle influencer, which is just a fancy way of saying she is unemployed and living off my dime. And then there is Chad, my sister's husband. He is a man who has never met a job he did not think was beneath him, yet has no problem driving the Range Rover I paid for. I spent my entire adult life paying what we call the black tax. I paid off my parents' mortgage. I paid for Ebony's college degree that she never uses. I funded weddings, vacations, and bailouts. I did it because I wanted their love. I did it because I thought that was what family did. But last week I learned the hard way that you cannot buy loyalty, and you certainly cannot buy love. I learned this while lying in a pool of my own blood on the marble floor of the penthouse I bought for us all to share. The nightmare began on a Tuesday morning. I woke up screaming. Not out loud because my throat was too dry to make a sound, but screaming on the inside. It felt like someone had replaced my spine with a jagged lightning bolt. I had just undergone a spinal fusion surgery. It is a brutal procedure where they literally weld your vertebrae together with metal rods and screws. The doctor had been very clear. You will need 24-hour care for the first week, Tiana. You cannot walk. You cannot bend. You cannot even go to the bathroom by yourself. Do you have someone to help you? I had smiled at him confidently. Of course I do. My mother and sister are moving in. They promised to take care of me. I remembered that promise as I lay there in the dark. I remembered my mother holding my hand in the pre-op room, her eyes filled with what looked like concern. "Do not worry, baby," she had said. "Mama is going to be right there. I will make you soup. I will help you wash. You just rest." I tried to turn my head to look at the clock, but even that small movement sent a shockwave of agony down my legs. The room was freezing. Why was it so cold? The thermostat was supposed to be set to 72 degrees for my recovery. I licked my cracked lips. I needed water. My pain medication was on the nightstand, but it was just out of reach. I needed help. "Mom," I croaked out. My voice was a broken whisper. I tried again, louder this time, forcing air through my dry lungs. "Mom." Loretta. Ebony. Silence. The kind of heavy, suffocating silence that you only find in empty houses. Panic started to set in. Maybe they were asleep. Maybe they were in the guest wing on the other side of the penthouse. I needed to make noise. I reached for the glass of water that had been left on the nightstand before I fell asleep. My fingers brushed it and it tipped over, crashing onto the hardwood floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. I waited. I waited for footsteps. I waited for my mother to burst in, asking what happened. I waited for Ebony to complain about the noise. But there was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen and the distant sound of Chicago traffic 40 floors below. I knew I was in trouble. The pain was becoming unbearable, a throbbing red-hot rhythm in my back. I needed those pills. I gritted my teeth and did the one thing the doctor told me absolutely not to do. I tried to move without assistance. I rolled onto my side and the world spun. I gasped, tears springing to my eyes. I dragged my body to the edge of the bed. My legs felt like lead weights. With a grunt of effort, I let my legs slide off the mattress and lowered myself toward the floor. My knees hit the ground hard. I screamed then, a raw animal sound of pure agony. My incision felt like it was tearing open. I lay there panting, cheek pressed against the cold floor, waiting for the black spots in my vision to clear. "Mom," I sobbed, "please, someone help me." Still no answer. I knew I had to get to the kitchen. My phone was charging on the kitchen island. I had left it there the night before the surgery, thinking I would not need it because my family would be my voice. I began to crawl. It was a slow, humiliating torture. I dragged myself inch by inch across the bedroom floor, down the long hallway. Every movement was a battle against my own body. I was the CFO of a multi-million-dollar company, and here I was crawling like a wounded dog in my own home. It took me 20 minutes to reach the kitchen. By the time I got there, I was drenched in cold sweat and shivering uncontrollably. I used the handle of the oven to pull myself into a sitting position, leaning against the cabinets. The kitchen was pristine. Too pristine. There was no smell of soup simmering, no sign of breakfast being made. And then I saw it. A bright yellow sticky note stuck to the stainless steel door of the refrigerator. It was my mother's handwriting. The loopy, elegant script she used to write checks from my account. I squinted, trying to focus my blurry eyes. The note read, "Tiana baby. Chad found these amazing VIP tickets to a ski resort in Aspen last minute. It is a huge networking opportunity for Ebony, and you know how depressed she has been lately. We could not say no. There is leftover pasta in the fridge. You are strong, baby. You always have been. You can handle this. We will be back on Sunday. Love, Mom. P.S. Do not forget to pay the electric bill. It is due tomorrow." I stared at the note. I read it 3 times. Aspen. They went to Aspen. They went skiing while I had metal rods in my back. They left me. They left me alone, unable to walk, unable to get food, unable to get my medicine. They left me with leftovers and a bill to pay. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, but it sounded more like a choke. Networking. Ebony did not network. Ebony took selfies and drank mimosas. And Chad, my unemployed brother-in-law, found VIP tickets. No, Chad found a way to use my money to buy VIP tickets. Rage is a powerful anesthetic. For a moment, the anger numbed the pain in my spine. I reached up and grabbed my phone from the counter. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I unlocked the screen. No missed calls, no texts checking on me, just an Instagram notification. I opened it, and there it was. A photo posted 2 hours ago. My mother Loretta wearing a white fur coat I recognized. It was mine. I had bought it for a gala last year. She was posing in front of a private jet holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Blessed. My daughter Tiana treated us to a surprise getaway because she is so busy being a boss lady. Family first. Lies. Pure public lies to protect her image as the saintly mother." I swiped. There was a video of Ebony and Chad. They were in the first-class cabin toasting with my crystal flutes. Chad was wearing a new Rolex. I zoomed in. It was the gold Daytona, the one I had bought myself as a bonus and kept in the safe. He had raided my safe. I dialed Ebony's number on FaceTime. I needed to see their faces. I needed them to see me. The phone rang and rang. Finally, she picked up. The connection was clear. I could see the snow-capped mountains in the background. Loud music was thumping. Ebony was wearing designer ski gear, her face perfectly made up. "Hey, Tiana," she shouted over the music. "You are awake. Mom said you would probably sleep through the whole weekend." "Ebony," I rasped. I am on the kitchen floor. I cannot move. You have to come back. Ebony rolled her eyes. She actually rolled her eyes. Oh my God, Tiana, do not start. We just got here. The vibe is immaculate. Do not bring your negative energy into this. Negative energy, I whispered. Ebony, I just had spinal surgery. Mom promised. Mom needs a break, Ebony snapped. Do you know how stressful it is worrying about you? She deserves this. And Chad said you are fine. The doctor said the surgery was a success. Stop being such a drama queen. Chad's face appeared in the frame. His cheeks were flushed, probably from the expensive bourbon he loved to drink on my tab. Hey, sugar mama, he slurred. Let the girl live a little. You are a big girl. Order a pizza or something. We are busy. We are networking. I saw my mother in the background. She was laughing at something a waiter was saying. She looked happy. Happier than I had ever seen her when she was with me. Mom, I screamed, using every ounce of air in my lungs. Mom, help me. Loretta glanced at the phone. She waved dismissively without even coming closer. Tell her to take a nap, Ebony. We have reservations at Nobu in 20 minutes. Ebony looked back at the camera. You heard her. Take a nap. Stop guilt-tripping us. We are here to relax, not to serve you. You have money, Tiana. Hire a nurse if you are that pathetic. Click. The screen went black. I sat there in the silence of my kitchen. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the floor. Pathetic. That is what they thought of me, after everything I had given. After the houses, the cars, the tuition, the clothes, I was pathetic because I needed them. A sharp, tearing sensation ripped through my lower back. I looked down. The white compression bandage around my waist was turning red. A dark crimson stain was spreading rapidly across the white fabric of my nightgown. I had torn my stitches when I fell. I tried to reach for the phone again, but my arm would not cooperate. My vision was tunneling. The room was getting darker. The cold from the floor was seeping into my bones. I was bleeding. I was alone. And I realized with a terrifying clarity that I might actually die right here. I might die on the floor of a $3 million penthouse while my family drank champagne in Aspen using my credit card. I thought about calling 911. I should call 911. But my fingers felt numb. My brain felt fuzzy. The shock was setting in. I closed my eyes. The last thing I saw was that yellow sticky note on the fridge. You are strong, baby. No, Mom. I am not strong. Not today. Today I am just a daughter who wanted her mother. And today you killed the daughter who loved you. Darkness took me. I did not know how long I lay there. Time became a blur of pain and cold. I had vivid fever dreams. I dreamed I was a little girl again, and I was drowning in a pool, but my family was standing on the deck, taking selfies while I went under. I dreamed of Chad laughing as he locked me in a safe. I woke up to a sound, a key turning in the lock. For a second my heart leaped. They came back. They realized they were wrong, and they came back. Hello, a voice called out. It was not my mother. It was deep and raspy and unfamiliar. Miss Tiana, are you here? It was Mrs. J. I tried to make a sound, but only a whimper came out. I heard footsteps, heavy, hurried footsteps, then a gasp. Lord have mercy! Mrs. J's face appeared above me. She was the private nurse I had hired for the night shifts starting next week because I knew my mother would not want to wake up at night. I had given her a key just in case. Thank God I had given her a key. Her eyes went wide when she saw the blood. She dropped her bag and fell to her knees beside me. Her hands were warm, so warm. Stay with me, baby girl. Stay with me. She pulled out her phone. I need an ambulance at the Kensington Tower. Penthouse B, code red. Female 35 post-op spinal surgery. Hemorrhaging. Consciousness is fading. Hurry! She took off her coat and wrapped it around me. She stroked my hair. I got you. I am here. You are not alone. I looked up at this woman. This stranger I was paying $40 an hour. She had more love in her eyes than the woman who gave birth to me. My family is in Aspen, I whispered. Shh, Mrs. J said, wiping a tear from my cheek. Forget them. They are not your family right now. I am your family right now, and I am not going anywhere. As the sirens wailed in the distance, I made a vow. If I survived this, if I made it off this floor, there would be no more mercy, no more checks, no more bailouts. Ebony was right about one thing. I have money, and I was going to use every single cent of it to destroy the comfortable world I had built for them. They wanted a ski trip. Fine. I hope they enjoyed it, because it was going to be the most expensive vacation of their lives. And the price tag was not going to be in dollars. It was going to be everything they owned. The paramedics burst through the door. I let go. I let the darkness take me again. But this time, it was not the darkness of death. It was the darkness of a storm gathering. And when I woke up, the lightning was going to strike. The phone felt like a brick of lead in my hand. My fingers were slippery with sweat and the blood that was now pooling beneath my waist. But I gripped the device with the desperation of a woman clinging to a cliff edge. The screen was the only source of light in the darkened kitchen, illuminating the spreading crimson stain on my white silk nightgown. I knew I should call 911. Any rational person would have dialed those 3 numbers immediately. But old habits die hard, and the conditioning of a lifetime is a powerful thing. For 35 years, I had been trained to call my mother or my sister whenever I was in trouble. Not because they would help, but because I had been programmed to report to them to seek their validation, even in my agony. I needed them to see this. I needed them to witness what their abandonment looked like. Maybe if they saw the blood, maybe if they saw my face gray with shock, they would snap out of their selfishness. Maybe they would finally be the family I paid them to be. I tapped Ebony's name. The FaceTime ringtone echoed in the silent penthouse, a cheerful electronic trill that mocked the sound of my own ragged breathing. It rang, and rang, and rang. My vision was blurring at the edges, a dark vignette closing in. I blinked hard, trying to stay conscious. Please pick up. Please just pick up and tell me you are coming back. Tell me the note was a joke. Tell me you are just at the grocery store. The screen connected. The sudden burst of pixelated color was blinding. The first thing I heard was the bass, a heavy thumping beat of house music that vibrated through the tiny speakers. Then I saw the light. Bright, crisp, natural sunlight reflecting off blinding white snow. Ebony's face filled the screen. She was not at the grocery store. She was standing on a balcony overlooking a pristine mountain range. She was wearing a metallic silver ski suit that I recognized immediately. It was a Montclair limited edition. It cost $3,000. I knew the price because I had paid the credit card bill last month, assuming she had bought it for a photo shoot. She looked radiant. Her skin was glowing, her makeup flawless, her hair perfectly laid despite the altitude. She was holding a flute of champagne and laughing at something off camera. "Oh my God, Tiana!" she shouted over the music, bringing the phone closer to her face. Her expression was not one of concern but of mild annoyance, like I had interrupted a very important selfie. "Why are you calling me right now? The service up here is spotty and you are making my video lag." "Ebony," I wheezed. The air in my lungs felt like broken glass. I could barely get the words out. "Ebony, help me." She frowned, squinting at the screen. She did not seem to see the blood or the sweat matting my hair. She only saw an interruption. What she asked, loud and impatient. "Speak up, Tiana. I can barely hear you over the DJ. Look at this view, though. Isn't it a vibe?" She spun the camera around. I saw the jagged peaks of the Aspen Mountains. I saw a crowd of beautiful people in designer snow gear holding drinks. I saw a fire pit roaring with orange flames. It looked warm. It looked expensive. It looked like the life I worked 80 hours a week to provide for them while I was currently freezing to death on my kitchen floor. I tore my stitches. I gasped, forcing the words out through clenched teeth. I am bleeding. I cannot move. You left me. Ebony turned the camera back to herself. She rolled her eyes. A dramatic, exaggerated role that I had seen 1,000 times since we were children. Girl, stop, she groaned. You are so dramatic. You had back surgery, not open heart surgery. The doctor said you would be sore. Take an Advil and go back to sleep. You are killing the mood right now. I am not being dramatic. I cried, a tear leaking out and tracking through the dust on my cheek. Mom promised. She promised to stay. I found the note. Why are you in Aspen? Because we needed a break. Ebony snapped, her voice sharpening. Do you know how exhausting it is to listen to you talk about this surgery for months? My back hurts, my nerves hurt, blah blah blah. It is depressing, Tiana. I am an influencer. My brand is about positivity and luxury. I cannot be around that hospital energy right now. It is bad for my engagement. Your brand, I whispered. My mind was reeling. She was talking about her Instagram engagement while I was hemorrhaging. Your brand is funded by my bank account, Ebony. That ski suit, that trip. I paid for it. And you should be happy that I am putting it to good use, she countered, taking a sip of her champagne. Look at this place. We got upgraded to the presidential suite because Chad knows the manager. You should be thanking us for networking on your behalf. Mom is inside charming the investors. We are working, Tiana. This is work. Work. Standing on a balcony drinking Dom Perignon was work. Lying in a puddle of blood wondering if I would ever walk again was drama. The gaslighting was so potent it almost made me dizzy. Put Mom on, I begged. My voice was getting weaker. Put Mom on the phone. She is busy, Ebony said, dismissing me with a wave of her manicured hand. She is talking to the bishop's wife. They are here too. Do not embarrass her, Tiana. Do not call her crying and making a scene. You know how she hates when you act like a victim. A victim. I looked down at my legs, which were twisted at an awkward angle. I tried to wiggle my toes. Nothing happened. The numbness was creeping up my thighs. It was not just the cold anymore. It was the nerve damage. The terror of it hit me like a physical blow. Ebony, please, I sobbed, losing all dignity. I think I am paralyzed. I think something went wrong. Please come home. Ebony sighed, a long, exasperated sound that crackled through the phone speaker. Tragedy. Tiana. That is what we should call you. Always a tragedy. Look, we just got here. The flight was long. Chad is tired and we have dinner reservations at Matsuhisa in an hour. We are not turning around just because you are having a panic attack. Suddenly the phone moved. Ebony must have turned because a new face appeared in the frame. It was Chad. My brother-in-law looked flush. His face was red and sweaty, and his eyes had that glassy look he got when he was 3 drinks deep into the afternoon. He was wearing a white cashmere turtleneck that I had bought for my father last Christmas. My father had never received it because Chad had borrowed it and never gave it back. Who are you talking to, babe? He asked, slurring slightly. Is that the bank? It is, Tiana, Ebony said, making a face. She is having a meltdown about her back again. She wants us to fly home. Chad laughed. It was a cruel, wet sound. He grabbed the phone from Ebony's hand. The camera angle shifted violently, zooming in on his pores. Hey, sugar mama, he bellowed into the microphone. What is the deal? You trying to ruin the trip before we even unpack? Chad, I whispered. I need help. You need a drink is what you need, he retorted. Or a Xanax. Seriously, Tiana, listen to yourself. You are a grown woman. You run a company. Figure it out. I fell, I said, my voice trembling. I fell and I cannot get up. Then crawl, he said with a smirk. That is what you do right. You grind, you hustle, crawl to your bed and sleep it off. The cruelty of it took my breath away. It was not just indifference. It was active malice. He enjoyed seeing me beg. He enjoyed holding the power even though the very phone he was holding was paid for by me. Do not guilt-trip us, he continued, his voice dropping to a nasty sneer. I know what you're doing. You want us to feel bad so you can control us. You use your money to control everyone. Well, guess what? We are in Aspen. We have the VIP passes, and we are going to enjoy ourselves whether you like it or not. We are here to relax, not to be your servants, not to be your nurses. You are rich, right? Hire a maid. He looked away from the camera, shouting at someone in the background. Hey, waiter! Another round. The good stuff. Put it on the room. Put it on the room. Put it on my card. Ebony snatched the phone back. Okay, Tiana, we have to go. The bishop is waving at us. Seriously, pull yourself together. You look a mess. Wash your face. We will check on you tomorrow. Maybe. If the signal is good. Ebony. Wait. I tried to shout, but it came out as a gargle. Love, you mean it? Bye, she sang out in her fake influencer voice. The screen went black. The silence that rushed back into the kitchen was heavier than before. It was a physical weight pressing down on my chest. They were gone. They had not just left me physically. They had left me emotionally, spiritually, and morally. They had looked at my pain and decided it was an inconvenience to their party. I stared at the black screen of my phone. My reflection stared back at me. I looked like a ghost. My skin was ashen, my lips were blue. Ebony was right. I looked a mess. But beneath the shock, beneath the physical agony, a new sensation was starting to boil. It started in my stomach, warm and sharp. It was not pain, it was rage. Pure, distilled rage. They told me to hire a maid. They told me to figure it out. They told me to pay for it. Fine, I would pay for it. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered against the marble tile. It landed face up. The screen lit up one last time with a notification. It was an email receipt from the airline. First class upgrade for 3 passengers. Confirmed. Total, $4,500. I stared at that number. $4,500. That was the price of my life to them. That was what it cost to leave me to die. My vision began to tunnel again. The black spots were larger now, consuming the room. The cold from the floor was no longer uncomfortable. It felt almost warm, like a blanket pulling me under. My heart rate was slowing down. I could feel the thud, thud, thud against my ribs getting fainter. But as my consciousness faded, the sound of the ski resort did not leave me. I could still hear the music. I could hear the pop of the champagne cork. I could hear Chad's wet laugh. And I could hear Ebony saying, "Don't kill the vibe." I closed my eyes. The darkness swallowed me whole. But in that last second before I went under, I made a promise to the woman lying on the floor. If I wake up, if I survive this, I am going to kill the vibe. I am going to kill it so dead that they will never celebrate anything ever again. And then there was nothing. Just the cold and the silence and the receipt glowing on the screen like a tombstone. The first thing I felt was warmth. It was not the dry, artificial heat of a furnace or the suffocating heat of a fever. It was the specific, heavy warmth of a wool blanket being tucked around my shoulders. It was the sensation of a hand holding mine, not with a grip of ownership or demand, but with a steady, anchoring pressure. I floated in the space between consciousness and the void. I could hear beeping, rhythmic and insistent. Beep, beep, beep. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like they had been glued shut. Lord, have mercy on this child. The voice was deep and rich like molasses. It vibrated in the air above me. It was a voice I recognized but could not place. It was not the shrill, demanding tone of my mother Loretta. It was not the high-pitched whine of my sister Ebony. I managed to crack my eyes open. The light was harsh, fluorescent. I blinked, tears leaking out of the corners of my eyes. A face swam into view. It was a face mapped with lines of wisdom and hardship framed by silver braids pulled back into a neat bun. Mrs. J. She was the private nurse I had hired through an agency. I had only met her once for an interview a week before my surgery. She was supposed to start her night shifts next week. I had given her a key just in case of an emergency, but I never expected her to use it. I never expected to need her like this. "You are back with us, sugar," Mrs. J said softly. Her hand moved to my forehead, brushing back a stray lock of hair that was matted with sweat. "Do not try to move. You are in the hospital. You are safe. Safe." The word felt foreign on my tongue. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. It felt like I had swallowed a handful of razor blades. "Water," I rasped. Mrs. J was moving before the word was fully out of my mouth. She held a cup with a straw to my lips, supporting my head with a gentleness that made my chest ache. "Sip slow, baby. Just a little." The cool liquid soothed the fire in my throat. I drank greedily until she pulled the cup away. "Easy now. We do not want you getting sick." I looked around the room. It was a private suite at Northwestern Memorial. The walls were a calming beige. There were flowers in the corner, but they were the generic hospital arrangement, not a gift. Where I started to ask, but stopped. I remembered. The floor, the blood, the cold, the phone call. Mrs. J pulled a chair close to the bed. The metal legs scraped against the linoleum. She sat down with a heavy sigh, smoothing her scrub top. Her eyes were dark and serious. "I found you on the kitchen floor, Miss Tiana. You were unconscious. You had lost a lot of blood. Your incision had opened up." I closed my eyes. The shame washed over me, hot and prickling. A successful woman found in her own filth, abandoned like a piece of trash. "How long?" I whispered. "Based on the coagulation, I would say you were there for at least 4 hours, maybe 5. Mrs. J said, her voice tight. "If I had not decided to stop by early to drop off my paperwork and check the layout of the apartment, you would be dead. Do you understand that? You were going into hypovolemic shock. Dead." I let the words sink in. My mother and sister had left me to die. They did not pull the trigger, but they loaded the gun and walked away. "I am sorry," I said. I do not know why I apologized. It was a reflex. I was used to apologizing for being an inconvenience. "Do not you dare apologize." Mrs. J's voice was sharp. "Not to me. Not for this." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "When the paramedics came, I told them I was your auntie. I told them I was family, so they would let me ride in the ambulance. I filled out the admission forms. I have been sitting in this chair for 14 hours watching that monitor." She paused and her gaze hardened. "And in all that time, Miss Tiana, not one person has called the hospital. Not one person has come to the desk asking for you. I checked your emergency contacts. Loretta Williams. I called her. It went straight to voicemail." I looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "They are in Aspen." Aspen. Mrs. J repeated the word as if it were a curse. "You just had your spine reconstructed and your people are in Aspen." "They had VIP tickets," I said, my voice sounding small and pathetic even to my own ears. "It was a networking opportunity." Mrs. J let out a sound that was half laugh, half scoff. "Networking? Is that what we are calling it now? Honey, I raised 5 children and buried a husband. I know the difference between necessity and neglect. Leaving a dog alone after surgery is neglect. Leaving a human being, your own child, is evil." She stood up and walked to the small sink in the corner. She wet a washcloth with warm water and came back to the bed. Without asking, she began to gently wipe my face. She cleaned the crust from my eyes, the dried sweat from my neck. Her touch was efficient, but incredibly tender. It was the kind of care you give to a porcelain doll or a beloved child. My mother never did this. Even when I was little and had the chicken pox, my mother would put a glass of water and a bottle of Tylenol by the bed and close the door because she did not want to catch it. She said sickness was mind over matter. This stranger, this woman I was paying by the hour, was washing my face with more love than my mother had shown me in 35 years. The tears came then. Silent, hot tears that tracked down my temples and into my ears. Mrs. J did not tell me to stop. She did not tell me to be strong. She just kept wiping my face, humming a low tune under her breath. It sounded like a gospel hymn. "Let it out," she murmured. "You let it all out. You have been holding it in too long. I can see it in your shoulders. You carry the weight of the world, girl. Time to put it down." I cried until I was empty. I cried for the little girl who tried to buy love with good grades. I cried for the woman who tried to buy love with mortgages and tuition. I cried for the realization that I was an orphan with living parents. When I finally stopped, Mrs. J handed me another sip of water. "Better?" she asked. "A little," I said. "Good. Because you need your strength. The doctor said you are going to be okay physically. They had to go back in and repair the tissue, but the hardware in your spine held. You are lucky, you are strong, but you are going to be here for a few days. And I am not going anywhere. I cleared my schedule. I am your night nurse and your day nurse until you are back on your feet." "I cannot ask you to do that," I said. "I will pay you double, triple." "Child, hush." Mrs. J waved a hand. "This is not about the money anymore. This is about right and wrong, and leaving you alone right now would be wrong." She sat back down and picked up a bag from the floor. "I brought your things. The paramedics grabbed your purse and your phone." She placed my phone on the tray table. It was cracked. The screen was shattered in a spiderweb pattern from where I had dropped it on the marble floor. "It has been buzzing," Mrs. J said. "Not calls, just notifications. A lot of them." I looked at the phone. The little red light was blinking. It looked like a warning beacon. "Can you hand it to me?" I asked. Mrs. J hesitated. "You should rest. Whatever is on there can wait." "I need to see," I said. "Please." She sighed and handed me the device. I pressed the side button. The screen lit up, fracturing the light through the broken glass. There were no texts from Ebony, no missed calls from my mother. There was a string of emails from my assistant at work wishing me a speedy recovery. And there was one notification from American Express. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew what it was before I even opened it. I had a corporate card, a business platinum Amex that I used strictly for company expenses. It had a limit that could buy a small island. I kept it in a biometric safe in my home office. A safe that only I could open, or so I thought. I unlocked the phone and tapped the notification. The banking app opened slowly, the loading wheel spinning like a taunt. Transaction alert. Amount $15,240, $100. Merchant, the Aspen Peak Resort and Spa. Date, today. Time, 10:45 a.m. I stared at the numbers. $15,000. In one swipe. While I was lying unconscious in a hospital bed recovering from near death, my family had checked into the most expensive resort in Colorado and put it on my business card. How? How did they get it? Then I remembered. Chad. Chad had been staying in the guest room for a week while he and Ebony looked for a house. A house I was supposed to buy for them. He must have seen me open the safe. He must have watched me punch in the code or use my fingerprint when I was groggy from the pre-surgery medication. He had stolen it. It wasn't just using my personal card, which was bad enough. This was my business card. This was embezzlement. This was a felony. I scrolled down. There were more. Delta Airlines, upgrade fees, $400 or $500, Aspen Ski Co., private lessons and gear rental, $3,200, Cloud9 Alpine Bistro, $850. They were not just on a trip, they were on a spree. They were burning through my livelihood, my reputation, and my hard-earned credit like it was monopoly money. They knew I was incapacitated. They knew I wouldn't be checking my email. They thought they had a blank check because Tiana always pays. Tiana always fixes it. A cold calm settled over me. It was different from the rage I had felt on the kitchen floor. That rage had been hot and chaotic. This was icy. This was the cold calculation of a CFO looking at a balance sheet that didn't add up. They did not just break my heart. They broke the law. I looked up at Mrs. J. She was watching me closely, her brow furrowed. Bad news, she asked. I took a deep breath. The pain in my back was still there, a dull throb, but my mind was razor sharp. Mrs. J, could you do me a favor? Anything, child. I need you to reach into the side pocket of my purse. There is a small black notebook. My contacts. She found it and handed it to me. I flipped through the pages until I found the name I was looking for. Vance. Arthur Vance was my corporate attorney. He was a shark in a three-piece suit. He cost $800 an hour, and he was worth every penny. He didn't care about feelings. He cared about assets, liabilities, and the ruthless application of the law. I need my laptop, I said. My voice was steady, stronger than it had been in days. And I need you to help me sit up. I have work to do. Mrs. J looked at the cracked phone screen, then back at me. She saw the change in my eyes. She saw the daughter die, and the executive wake up. She nodded slowly, a small smile playing on her lips. All right then, let us get to work. She adjusted the bed, raising the back so I was sitting upright. She placed the tray table across my lap. I dialed Vance's number. It was Sunday, but he would answer. He always answered for me. The phone rang twice. Tiana, Vance's voice was crisp. I thought you were recovering. Is everything all right? No, Vance, I said, staring at the transaction alert for $15,000. Everything is not all right, but it is about to be handled. I need you to open a file. What kind of file, Tiana? A merger? An acquisition? No, I said. A forensic audit. And Vance, prepare the eviction notices. Eviction notices, plural. Yes, I am cleaning house. I hung up the phone. I looked at the transaction alert one last time. Aspen Peak Resort. Enjoy it, Mother. Enjoy the fluffy towels and the room service. Enjoy the view, because it is the last luxury you are ever going to taste on my dime. I looked at Mrs. J. She was taking her knitting out of her bag, settling in for the long haul. Thank you, I said. For what, baby? For saving my life, and for being here while I take it back. Mrs. J clicked her knitting needles together. The sound was rhythmic and soothing. You do what you have to do, Miss Tiana. I will keep the doctors away. You handle your business. I opened my banking app again. I did not freeze the card. Not yet. Freezing it would alert them. It would stop the spending and they might come back. I didn't want them back. Not yet. I wanted them to dig. I wanted them to dig a hole so deep and so expensive that they would never be able to climb out of it. I watched another notification pop up. Montclair Aspen, $2 $100. Good, I whispered. Keep going, Ebony. Buy the jacket, buy the boots, buy it all. Because you are buying your own jail sentence. I lay back against the pillows, the cracked phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. The pain in my spine was still there, but it was different now. It was fuel. The savior had come. And the first receipt was just the beginning of the reckoning. The hospital room was quiet, save for the rhythmic hum of the compression boots squeezing my calves to prevent blood clots. It was a stark, sterile contrast to the chaos raging inside my mind. Mrs. J sat in the corner reading her Bible, her lips moving silently. She was the picture of peace. I was a storm waiting to break. I held my phone in my hand. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb of glass fractures that distorted everything I looked at, but the images were still clear enough to slice through my heart like a scalpel. I had been scrolling for an hour. I knew I should put it down. I knew looking at their social media was only pouring salt into my open surgical wounds, but I could not stop. I needed to see the extent of their betrayal. I needed to document the audacity. A notification popped up at the top of my screen. Loretta Williams is live on Facebook. My mother, live. My thumb hovered over the banner. I knew watching this would hurt. I knew it would make my blood pressure spike, which would set off the monitors and bring the nurses running. But I had to know. I tapped the screen. The video loaded. The connection was crystal clear. My mother's face filled the frame bathed in the golden glow of a fireplace. She was not in a hotel room. She was in a lodge, a private chalet. I could see the timber beams of the ceiling behind her, and a chandelier made of antlers that probably cost more than my first car. But it was what she was wearing that made the bile rise in my throat. She was wrapped in a white mink coat. It was vintage, it was exquisite, and it was mine. I had bought it at an estate sale 3 years ago, planning to wear it for my own wedding someday, if I ever found a man who wanted me for me and not my bank account. It had been hanging in the back of my cedar closet inside a garment bag that was zipped and sealed. She had raided my closet. Before leaving me on the floor, she had taken the time to go through my things and steal my coat. Praise the Lord, saints! My mother's voice boomed through the phone speaker, smooth and rich like warm butter. I just wanted to hop on here and share a testimony. Look at what the Lord has done. She spun the camera around, showing off the view. Snow-capped mountains stretched out endlessly, framed by a sunset that painted the sky in violets and oranges. It was breathtaking. It was the view I was supposed to be seeing if I had not been cut open on an operating table. We are here in beautiful Aspen, Colorado, she cooed, turning the camera back to herself. She adjusted the collar of my mink coat, preening like a peacock. I just have to give glory to God and to my beautiful daughter, Tiana. My breath hitched. She said my name. You all know how hard my Tiana works? She continued, her eyes sparkling with fake tears. She is the CFO of a major firm, a boss, a leader. And you know she is so busy running the world that she could not make this trip. But she said, Mama, you have done so much for me. You raised me. You sacrificed for me. I want you to go rest. I want you to enjoy the fruits of your labor. She wiped a non-existent tear from her cheek. So she sent us here on an all-expenses-paid retreat. She said, Mama, go be a queen. And I just want to ask all my prayer warriors to lift Tiana up right now. She is back in Chicago, closing big deals, making big moves while her mama rests. That is what a good child does. That is the blessing of raising them right. Proverbs says her children arise and call her blessed. Well, I am blessed, y'all. I am truly blessed. I stared at the screen, my mouth hanging open. The lies were so smooth, so practiced. She had turned her abandonment into a testimony. She had turned her theft into a gift. She was using my name to garner praise from the church ladies while I was pissing into a catheter bag 3 states away. I watched the comments roll in. Sister Patterson wrote, Amen, Loretta. You deserve it. You are such a good mother. Deacon Davis wrote, Won't he do it, beautiful family? Cousin Sheila wrote, Tiana is such a gem. You raised a queen. They were praising her. They were validating her delusion. No one knew she had left me on the floor. No one knew she was wearing stolen fur. To them, she was the matriarch of the year. I felt a heat rising in my chest, a physical burning sensation that had nothing to do with my surgery. It was pure, unadulterated fury. She was erasing my suffering. She was rewriting the narrative in real time, ensuring that if I ever tried to tell the truth, I would look like the liar. I would look like the ungrateful daughter trying to tear down a saint. I swiped out of Facebook. I could not watch another second of her preening. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone again. I opened Instagram. I needed to see what Ebony was doing. If my mother was playing the saint, Ebony would be playing the star. Her story was a montage of excess. Clip 1. A boomerang of champagne glasses clinking. The location tag was the Little Nell, a 5-star hotel where rooms started at $2,000 a night. Clip 2. Ebony and Chad in a private hot tub, steam rising around them, snow falling gently on their heads. Chad was smoking a cigar. A Cuban cigar. I wondered how much that cost. Clip 3. A still photo. It was a plate of food. Wagyu beef topped with truffles and gold leaf. The caption read, Dinner of Champions. Thank you, universe, for this abundance. Manifesting this life was the best decision I ever made. Rich life, black girl magic, blessed, Aspen vibes, the universe. She was thanking the universe. Not her sister, not the woman whose spine was held together with titanium screws, not the woman whose credit card was currently being swiped so hard it was probably smoking. The universe. I scrolled to the comments. Her followers were eating it up. Yes, queen, living your best life. Goals. Absolute goals. You and Chad are power couple energy. Power couple. They were two unemployed grifters leeching off a sick woman. Then I saw a comment from one of her influencer friends. Girl, how did you pull this off last minute? I thought Tiana was having surgery. My heart stopped. Someone knew. Someone remembered. Ebony's reply was buried in the thread, but I found it. Oh, she did. But you know Tiana. She is a workaholic. She insisted we go without her. She did not want to waste the tickets. She is recovering comfortably with private nurses. She wants us to be happy. Comfortably. I looked down at the tubes running out of my arm. I looked at the bruise blooming on my hip from where I had fallen. I looked at Mrs. J sleeping in a plastic chair because she was afraid to leave me alone. Comfortably. Something snapped inside my brain. It was like a rubber band stretched too far, finally giving way. A primal roar built up in my throat. I did not scream, but my body reacted. I reared back and threw the phone. I threw it with every ounce of strength I had left. It flew across the room, spinning end over end, and smashed into the wall opposite my bed. It hit with a satisfying crunch of glass and plastic, then fell to the floor, landing next to the trash can. Mrs. J jumped up, her Bible sliding off her lap. Lord have mercy, what happened? Are you in pain, baby? I was panting, my chest heaving. The monitors started beeping faster, picking up my elevated heart rate. They are lying, I hissed. My voice sounded demonic even to me. They are lying to everyone. They are wearing my clothes, they are eating gold, and they are telling the world I sent them there. Mrs. J walked over and picked up the phone. She inspected it. It was dead. The screen was completely black. Well, you sure fixed them, she said dryly. You broke your phone. Now how are you going to call your lawyer? Her words cut through the red haze of my rage. The lawyer, Vance. I needed to call Vance. Mrs. J shook her head and reached into her oversized tote bag. She pulled out an old iPad. Here, use this. And try not to break it. It belongs to my grandson. I took the iPad, my hands still trembling. I logged into my email. I found Vance's contact info. I pulled up the office line. It was Sunday evening, but Vance picked up on the second ring. He knew my number, or rather, he knew Mrs. J's number now, since I had used her phone earlier. Tiana, he said. His voice was calm, cool, collected. The voice of a man who billed by the minute and never lost a case. I see some activity on the accounts. Do you want me to freeze them now? I closed my eyes. I thought about freezing the cards. I thought about the embarrassment they would feel when the waiter came with the bill for the Wagyu beef, and the card declined. It would be a moment of shame, a moment of panic. They would call me screaming. They would have to come home. But coming home was too easy. Coming home meant they got away with it. Coming home meant they just had an awkward flight back and a scolding. I did not want to scold them. I wanted to bury them. In the state of Illinois, theft over $500 is a felony, but theft over $10,000 is a Class 2 felony, and theft over $100,000 is a Class 1 felony. Mandatory prison time. No probation. I did the math in my head. The resort, the flights, the gear, the food, the fur coat. They were at about $25,000. That was bad. But it was not life in prison bad. It was not lose everything you have ever loved bad. No, Vance, I said. My voice was ice cold. Do not freeze the cards. There was a pause on the line. Tiana, are you sure? They are spending at a rate of $5,000 an hour. Let them, I said. Why, Vance asked. He sounded curious, not judgmental. He was a shark recognizing another shark. Because grand larceny charges stick better when the numbers are undeniable, I said. I want them to feel safe. I want them to think the well has no bottom. I want them to buy the jewelry. I want them to book the helicopter tours. I want them to clear out the boutique. I took a deep breath, wincing as my stitches pulled. What is the threshold for a Class 1 felony, Vance? Depending on the jurisdiction and the specific charges, usually around $100,000 or up, he replied instantly. Let them get there, I commanded. Do not stop a single transaction until they hit 6 figures, or until I say so. You are playing a dangerous game, Tiana Vance warned. You might not get that money back. I do not want the money back, I said, looking at the blank wall where my phone had shattered. I want their freedom. I want their reputation. I want their future. That is the price of admission. Understood, Vance said. I could hear the smile in his voice. I will alert the fraud department to bypass the security flags. We will let the river run. Also, Vance, I added, I need you to look into something else for me. Go ahead. The house my parents live in, the one on Maple Drive. Yes, you pay the mortgage on it. I know I pay the mortgage, but whose name is on the deed? I will have to pull the records, but if you bought it, the deed should be in your name or the trust. Find out, I said. Because if that deed is in my name, I want you to prepare an eviction notice. For your parents. For the squatters living in my property, I corrected. And Vance, make it an immediate eviction. 3 days' notice. Use the emergency clause if you have to. Tiana, this is nuclear. They left me to die on the floor, Vance. They stepped over my body to go skiing. Nuclear is the only option left. I heard the tapping of keys on the other end of the line. Consider it done. I will have the papers drawn up by tomorrow morning. Get some rest, Tiana. You have a big week ahead of you. I hung up. I handed the iPad back to Mrs. J. You look scary, child, Mrs. J said quietly. You look like someone just killed your dog, and you are on your way to kill theirs. I lay back against the pillows. The rage had cooled into something solid and heavy in my gut. It was no longer a fire. It was a stone. They wanted the rich life, I whispered, staring at the ceiling. They wanted the black girl magic. Well, they are about to see a different kind of magic. The kind that makes houses disappear. The kind that makes cars vanish. The kind that turns a VIP vacation into a prison cell. I closed my eyes. For the first time in days, I did not feel pain. I felt power. Let them spend. Let them post. Let them pray. Because when they come down from that mountain, I will be waiting. And I am not the daughter they left behind. I am the landlord, and rent is due. The office of Arthur Vance was exactly what you would expect from a man who charged $800 an hour to destroy people's lives legally. It was located on the 45th floor of a glass tower in downtown Chicago. Everything was chrome and black leather and smelled of expensive espresso and intimidation. I was not walking. I was rolling. Mrs. J pushed my wheelchair across the polished concrete floor, her sensible shoes squeaking slightly in the quiet hum of the office. I felt small in the chair. My back was a roadmap of agony held together by a brace and a cocktail of painkillers, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. The fog of familial obligation had lifted, leaving only the sharp edges of reality. Vance stood up as we entered his private conference room. He was a tall man with a shaved head and a suit that cost more than my first car. He did not look at the wheelchair with pity. He looked at it like it was evidence. Miss Tiana, he said, his voice a low rumble. I have the preliminary report. It is worse than we thought. I nodded, motioning for Mrs. J to park me at the head of the heavy oak table. I was ready. I had spent 35 years being protected from the truth by my own denial. Today I wanted to see the scars. Lay it out, Vance, I said. Do not sugarcoat it. Vance placed a thick black binder on the table. It landed with a heavy thud. He opened it, revealing a spreadsheet that was color-coded in red. First, let us address the immediate bleeding. Vance began, pointing to the first column. The American Express card. Since our call on Sunday, your family has spent another $18,000. They rented a private helicopter for a tour of the Rockies. They bought 3 pairs of skis, even though they do not ski. And they charged a $5,000 dinner at a members-only club. I looked at the numbers. They were just digits now. They were not money. They were nails in a coffin. They are trying to live a billionaire lifestyle on a millionaire's credit limit, I said dryly. Let them. What about the rest? Vance turned the page. This is where it gets interesting, Tiana. You asked me to look into the deed for the house on Maple Drive, the one your parents reside in. I leaned forward, wincing as the movement pulled at my stitches. I remembered buying that house 10 years ago. My father Bernard had made some bad investments. They were facing foreclosure. My mother Loretta had cried for weeks, saying she could not bear the shame of the church ladies knowing they lost their home. So I stepped in. I was 25, fresh out of business school, and making my first real bonus. I paid off the arrears and refinanced the mortgage. But for the last decade, my mother had treated that house like her castle. She redecorated it. She hosted parties. She told me to take my shoes off at the door because it was her floor. She told me I could not stay in the guest room because she was turning it into a prayer room. I had paid every mortgage bill for 120 months, but in my head, it was still their house. Vance slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a copy of the warranty deed. Read the grantee line, Vance said. I looked at the line. It was typed in bold capital letters. Tiana Williams, sole owner, Vance said. No joint tenancy, no life estate clause. Your parents' names are nowhere on this document. You bought it outright. You hold the title. Legally speaking, they are tenants at will. And since there is no lease agreement and they have never paid rent, they are essentially squatters who you have graciously allowed to stay. I stared at my name on the paper. I owned it. I owned the roof over their heads. I owned the walls where my mother hung her portraits. I owned the kitchen where she cooked the holiday dinners she sometimes forgot to invite me to. They act like they own it, I whispered. My mother told me last Thanksgiving that I was lucky she let me park in the driveway. Vance let out a short, humorless laugh. That is the psychology of the leech, Tiana. They consume so much they forget they are not the host. But the law does not care about their feelings. The law cares about this piece of paper. You have the power to remove them. I ran my finger over the seal on the deed. It felt cold. Keep going, I said. What else? Vance flipped to the back of the binder. His expression grew darker. This part took some digging. You mentioned a small trust fund left by your grandmother. Big Mama. Yes, I said. Big Mama passed when I was 22. She did not have much, but she left a small savings account for me and Ebony. She said it was for a rainy day. I never touched mine. I wanted to save it for something special, maybe a down payment on a vacation home or a wedding. Vance pulled out a bank statement. It was from a bank I had not used in years. The account is empty, Tiana. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean, empty? There was $20,000 in there. It was drained 2 years ago, Vance said. A cashier's check was issued for the full balance. I did not authorize that, I said, my voice rising. I never signed for that. I know, Vance replied. He pulled out a photocopy of the withdrawal slip. He placed it next to a document I had signed for him earlier. Look at the signature. I looked. The signature read, Tiana Williams. It was looped and elegant. It looked a lot like my signature. But there was a tell. The letter I in Williams. I dot my I with a firm slash. This I was dotted with a small perfect circle. Ebony, I breathed. Ebony dots her eyes with circles, I said. Since middle school. She thinks it is cute. Vance nodded. It is a clumsy forgery, but the teller did not catch it. Or maybe they knew her. Either way, your sister walked into a bank posed as you and stole $20,000 that your grandmother left specifically for you. The rage that had been simmering in my gut flared up white-hot. The Aspen trip was bad, the house was infuriating, but this was a violation of the sacred. Big Mama had worked as a housekeeper for 40 years to save that money. She had scrubbed floors on her hands and knees to leave us a legacy. and Ebony had stolen it to buy what? Purses, shoes, a car for Chad. This is identity theft, I said, my voice shaking. This is fraud. It is Vance confirmed. And because it involves a banking institution and crosses state lines, if she spent any of it online, it is federal. We are looking at wire fraud and bank fraud. Minimum sentences for these crimes start at years, not months. I looked at Mrs. J. She had stopped knitting. Her face was a mask of sorrow. She knew what this meant. In our community, you do not call the police on family. It is the unspoken rule. You handle it in-house. You pray about it. You absorb the loss because the system is already against us. But the system was not destroying me. My family was. Ebony drove me to the bank that day, I remembered. 2 years ago. I had hurt my ankle and needed a ride to sign some papers for my own company. She must have memorized my account number. She must have kept my ID when she held my purse. She stole from Big Mama, I said, tears pricking my eyes. She stole from the dead. She stole from you, Vance corrected. And she used your grandmother's memory to do it. He closed the binder. The sound was final, like a gavel coming down. So here is where we stand, Tiana. Your mother and father are living in your house without a lease. Your sister and her husband are currently committing grand larceny in Colorado, using your corporate credit card. And your sister has previously committed felony bank fraud and identity theft against you. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. I have drafted the documents. We have a few options. Option A is the soft approach. We freeze the cards, we send a cease and desist, and we ask them to sign a repayment plan they will never honor. Option B is the hard approach. We file civil suits for the money and start a standard eviction process, which could take months. I looked at the deed. I looked at the forged signature. I thought about the sticky note on the fridge. You are strong, baby. What is option C? I asked. Vance smiled. It was a shark's smile, terrifying and efficient. Option C is the nuclear option. We treat this as a criminal enterprise. We file an immediate emergency eviction based on the unauthorized use of your assets, which proves they are a financial danger to the homeowner. We file police reports for the credit card fraud and the trust fund theft. We do not ask them to leave. We have them removed by the sheriff. Mrs. J made a low sound in her throat. Jesus, take the wheel. I looked at my hands. They were the hands that had signed thousands of checks for them. They were the hands that had held my mother when my father lost his job. They were the hands that had braided Ebony's hair before her prom. They were also the hands that had dragged my broken body across a floor while they laughed. I want option C, I said. Vance did not blink. Are you sure, Tiana? Once we pull this trigger, there is no unpulling it. Your mother will end up in a shelter or a low-income rental. Your sister will likely go to prison. Your father will be on the street. The community will talk. The church will talk. Let them talk, I said. Let them talk about how Tiana Williams finally stopped being a doormat. I looked at the deed to the house on Maple Drive. I want them out, Vance. I want them out before they get back from Aspen. I want them to come home to changed locks and their bags on the curb. Vance nodded. He pulled a file from his briefcase. These are the eviction notices. Because you are the sole owner and there is no lease, you can terminate their tenancy at will immediately. However, given the severity of the financial abuse, I have expedited the process. I have a judge who owes me a favor. He signed the emergency order an hour ago. We have the legal right to change the locks today. Today, I said. And the credit cards, Vance asked. Let them run until midnight tonight, I said. Let them have one last dinner. Let them think they got away with it. Then freeze everything. Mark the charges as fraudulent. Flag their IDs. I want them stranded at the airport with no way to pay for a cab. Vance took notes, his pen scratching loudly across the paper. And the trust fund. File the police report, I said. Give them the evidence, the forgery, the dates, everything. Vance looked up, his eyes gleaming. You are thorough, Tiana. You would make a good prosecutor. I learned from the best I said. My mother taught me how to spot a lie. She just never thought I would use it against her. Vance stood up. I will set the wheels in motion. The sheriff will meet my team at the Maple Drive house in 2 hours to execute the lock change. Do you want to be there? No, I said. I do not want to see their house. I do not want to smell their perfume. I want it sanitized. I want it sold. Sold? Vance asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, I said. Put it on the market tomorrow. Price it to move. I do not care if we take a loss. I want that asset off my books. I want the physical link to them severed. Understood. I turned to Mrs. J. She was looking at me with a mixture of fear and awe. You think I am wrong, Mrs. J? I asked, my voice softening. She shook her head slowly. No, child. I do not think you are wrong. I think you are wounded. And a wounded animal bites back. But you have to live with this. Can you live with putting your mama on the street? I thought about the cold floor. I thought about the blood. I thought about the laughter on the phone. I can live with it, I said, because she was fine with leaving me to die on mine. Vance gathered the files. It is done. By this time tomorrow they will have no home, no money, and warrants for their arrest. Good, I said. Vance walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the handle. One more thing, Tiana. When they find out, and they will find out, they are going to come for you, not with lawyers, but with guilt. They are going to use every weapon they planted in your head since you were a child. Are you ready for that? I touched the brace around my waist. I felt the metal that was now holding me together. I am made of steel now, Vance, I said. Let them come. They will just break themselves against me. Vance nodded and left the room. The door clicked shut. I sat in the silence, the hum of the city below me. I picked up the copy of the deed. Tiana Williams. It looked different now. It did not look like a burden. It looked like a weapon. Mrs. J reached out and took my hand. Her palm was rough and warm. You rest now, she said. The war has started. You need your strength for the battle. I closed my eyes. I did not see darkness. I saw the snow in Aspen. I saw the avalanche coming down the mountain. And I knew that I was the one who had started the slide. The silence in the penthouse was different now. 2 weeks ago, it had been the silence of a tomb, a place where I was left to die. Now, it was the silence of a hunting blind. Mrs. J and I were waiting. We had tracked their flight. We knew they had landed at O'Hare an hour ago. We knew they had taken a luxury black car service back to the city, a car service that cost $300, a car service charged to my account. I sat in my wheelchair by the floor-to-ceiling windows facing the door. My back was stiff, my incision itching under the brace, but I felt strong. I was wearing a silk robe, and my hair was pulled back tight. I was not the victim on the floor anymore. I was the CEO presiding over a bankruptcy hearing. Mrs. J stood behind me, her hands resting protectively on the handles of the wheelchair. She had cleaned the apartment until it sparkled. She had removed the bloodstains from the kitchen tile. She had thrown away the flowers that had died while I was in the hospital. The stage was set. Then we heard it. The heavy clack of the elevator lock engaging. The sound of a key scratching against the metal plate of the front door. They still had their keys. They still thought this was their home. The door swung open with a bang. They burst in like a hurricane of noise and entitlement. Laughter spilled into the hallway, mixed with the thud of heavy suitcases hitting the hardwood floor. They brought the smell of cold winter air and expensive duty-free perfume with them. Here we are, my mother's voice boomed. Lord, it is good to be back on flat ground. My ears are still popping. Loretta walked in first. She was glowing. Her skin was bronzed from the reflection of the sun off the snow. She was wearing a new cashmere scarf and designer boots that I had definitely not bought for her before the trip. She looked healthy. She looked vibrant. She looked like a woman who had not spent a single second worrying about her daughter. Ebony followed her, struggling with 3 massive shopping bags from high-end boutiques. She dropped them in the entryway without a care. Ugh, I am exhausted, Ebony whined. First class is nice, but the service was so slow today. I need a nap. Tiana had better have changed the sheets in the guest room. Then Chad lumbered in. He looked bigger, redder. He kicked the door shut with his heel, not bothering to lock it. Home sweet home, he grunted. Or at least home until we get our own place right, babe. They moved into the living room, stripping off their coats and gloves, throwing them over my custom Italian leather furniture. They did not look for me. They did not call out my name with concern. They just assumed I was somewhere in the background waiting to serve them. Loretta looked around the living room, frowning. She ran a finger along the back of the sofa, checking for dust. "Where is Tiana?" she asked, loud and sharp. "Why is it so quiet in here? And why is the thermostat set so low? It is freezing." She walked toward the kitchen, her heels clicking aggressively. She saw a pile of mail on the counter that Mrs. J had brought in. She flipped through it, uninterested. "Tiana," she shouted. "Get out here! Why is this house a mess? There are no fresh flowers. The fridge better be stocked. I am starving." She did not see me yet. I was positioned in the shadows near the library alcove. I watched her. I watched the woman who gave birth to me treat my home like a hotel she was disappointed in. She picked up a canvas laundry bag she had dragged in from the hallway. It was bulging with dirty clothes from their trip, sweat-stained ski thermals, socks that smelled of damp wool, and wine-stained sweaters. She walked into the center of the room and dropped the bag. It hit the floor with a heavy, wet thud. "Tiana," she yelled again, impatience rising in her voice. "Where are you? My back hurts from that plane ride. You need to do a load of laundry immediately. Chad has a meeting tomorrow and he needs his white shirts." She turned, and finally she saw me. I sat motionless in the wheelchair, my hands folded in my lap. Mrs. J stood behind me like a sentinel, her face made of stone. Loretta jumped back, a hand flying to her chest. "Lord have mercy, Tiana," she gasped. "You scared me. Why are you sitting there in the dark like a ghost?" I did not blink. I did not smile. I just looked at her. "Welcome home, everyone," I said. My voice was low, smooth, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Did you have a nice trip?" Loretta recovered quickly. She smoothed her scarf and put her hands on her hips. Her eyes raked over the wheelchair, but she did not ask why I was in it. She did not ask about my pain. She only saw it as a prop. "It was fine," she said dismissively. "A lot of walking. My feet are killing me." "But seriously, Tiana, why is the laundry machine not running? I texted you when we landed. You knew we were coming." "I texted you," I repeated. "Interesting. I must have missed that text. Just like you missed my calls when I was bleeding out on the kitchen floor." Ebony walked into the room, scrolling on her phone. She looked up, saw the wheelchair, and let out a dramatic sigh. "Oh my God, are you still doing this?" she asked, rolling her eyes. "The wheelchair, really, Tiana? You had back surgery 2 weeks ago. You should be up and walking by now. You are milking this for sympathy." "It is pathetic." I looked at my sister. She was wearing a diamond necklace, a necklace that cost $5,000. I knew because the receipt was in the folder on my lap. "I am healing, Ebony," I said, calm as a frozen lake. "Some injuries take longer than others, especially the ones caused by neglect." Ebony waved her hand, swatting away my words like a fly. "Whatever. Look, did you get the packages I sent ahead? My new ring light and the tripod. I need to do an unboxing video for the trip haul." "They are in the mailroom," I said. "I have not been able to fetch them, since I cannot walk." Ebony groaned. "You are so useless sometimes." "Fine, Chad can get them." Chad had wandered over to the wet bar. He was already opening cabinets looking for something. He found it. A bottle of vintage Cabernet Sauvignon. A bottle I had been saving for my 5-year anniversary as CFO. It was worth $600. He popped the cork without even looking at the label. He poured a massive glass, filling it to the rim like it was cheap fruit juice. He took a loud gulp and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. It was okay, he said, answering my question about the trip as if he hadn't just ignored my entire existence for 2 weeks. But honestly, Tiana, next time you need to book the Mountain View suite. We had the Valley View, it was boring. And the room service menu was limited. I expected better for what you make. He swirled the wine, leaning back against my bar, scratching his stomach. Also, the rental car was a mid-size SUV. We barely fit the luggage. Next time spring for the Escalade. Do not be cheap. Cheap. The word hung in the air. I looked at the man who had contributed nothing to this family but debt and audacity. He was drinking my prize wine in my house, wearing clothes I paid for, complaining about a luxury vacation I unknowingly funded. I felt Mrs. J tense behind me. I reached up and patted her hand, signaling her to stay calm. I will keep that in mind, Chad, I said. My voice was pleasant, almost conversational. Mountain View. Escalade. Got it. I want you all to be comfortable. Loretta kicked the laundry bag toward me. It slid across the floor, stopping just inches from the wheels of my chair. Well, start by making us comfortable, now, she snapped. Put these in the wash. Delicate cycle, Tiana. Do not ruin my cashmere. And then order dinner. We want seafood. That place downtown with the crab legs. Have them deliver. She walked past me, heading toward the master bedroom. My bedroom. I am going to take a bath in the jacuzzi tub, she announced. Do not disturb me for an hour. And Tiana, make sure there are fresh towels. The ones in the guest bathroom were scratchy last time. She did not even pause. She opened the door to my sanctuary and walked in as if she held the deed. Ebony flopped onto the sofa, kicking her boots off onto the coffee table. She picked up the remote and turned on the television, blasting a reality show. Chad refilled his glass and burped loudly. He looked at me with a smirk. So are you going to order the food or what? Or are you going to sit there feeling sorry for yourself all night? I looked at them. The parasites. They had returned to the host body expecting to feed. They saw the wheelchair and saw weakness. They saw my silence and saw submission. They had no idea that the host had become toxic. I smiled. It was a slow, cold stretching of my lips that did not reach my eyes. Of course, I said. I will order the seafood, the king crab legs, the lobster tails, everything you want. Really? Ebony asked, looking up surprised. You are not going to lecture us about the budget? Not tonight, I said. Tonight is a celebration. Celebration of what Chad asked, his mouth full of wine. Of family, I said. Of being together. In fact, I was thinking we should do something special, since I missed the trip and I missed the bonding time. Loretta poked her head out of the bedroom door. She looked suspicious, but intrigued. What kind of special, she asked. I was thinking of a dinner party, I said. This Saturday. Here, but not just us. A real party. A party, Ebony perked up. Can I invite my followers? Can we get a photographer? Better, I said. I want to invite everyone. The bishop, the deacons, your friends from the club mom. And Chad. I want you to invite your parents. Chad choked on his wine. My parents. Why? Because we are family, I said smoothly. And I want to make a big announcement. I have a surprise, a gift, something that will change all of our lives. Loretta stepped fully out of the bedroom. Her eyes were gleaming. A gift? What kind of gift, Tiana? Is it about the business? Did you get a bonus? Something like that, I lied. It is a financial breakthrough, and I want to share it with you. I want to show you how much I appreciate everything you have done for me, especially recently. I saw the greed wash over them. It was visible, visceral. It relaxed their shoulders. It softened their faces. They thought I had broken. They thought the abandonment had worked, that it had made me desperate for their approval again. They thought I was trying to buy my way back into their good graces. Well, Loretta said, smoothing her hair. That sounds lovely, Tiana. A dinner party. Yes. I can wear my new dress. The bishop will be so impressed. And my parents, Chad muttered. Yeah, okay. They have been asking why we never invite them over to the big house. This will shut them up. Great, I said. It is settled. Saturday night, 7 o'clock. I will handle everything. The catering, the decor, the guest list. You just show up and look beautiful. Ebony squealed. I am going to live stream it. It is going to be epic. It certainly will be, I whispered to myself. Now Tiana Loretta commanded, pointing at the laundry bag. The clothes. Chop, chop. I nodded to Mrs. J. She turned my wheelchair around. We headed toward the laundry room. As we moved down the hallway, I could hear them talking behind me. See, Chad said. I told you she would cave. She always caves. She needs us. Yeah, Ebony laughed. She is so desperate it is embarrassing. But hey, if she wants to throw money at us, who are we to stop her? I love my daughter, Loretta said loud enough for me to hear. She has a good heart. She just needs a firm hand sometimes. We entered the laundry room, and Mrs. J closed the door. The sound of their voices was cut off. Mrs. J looked at me. Her eyes were wide. You are going to wash their clothes, she whispered. After the way they just treated you. After they drank your wine and took your bedroom. I looked at the pile of dirty laundry. I looked at the stains of their excess. I am going to wash them, I said. I am going to wash them in the hottest water possible. I am going to shrink every sweater. I am going to bleed every color. I am going to ruin every single thread. Mrs. J cracked a smile. It was a wicked delight. And the dinner party, she asked. The dinner party is the trap, I said. They want a show. I am going to give them a show. They want the bishop to see their success. He is going to see their sins. They want Chad's parents to see the big house. They are going to see the eviction notice. I reached for the detergent. They think I am weak, Mrs. J. They think I am the same Tiana who begs for scraps. But they forgot one thing. What is that, child? I am the one who signs the checks, I said, pouring the soap. And on Saturday night, I am closing the account. I started the machine. The water rushed in, drowning out the sound of their celebration in the other room. I watched the clothes spin, round and round, just like their lies. Saturday was coming, and it was going to be a red wedding. The smell of garlic butter and steamed crab legs filled the penthouse, dampening the lingering scent of expensive perfume and entitlement. My family sat around the dining table, devouring the $300 seafood tower I had ordered. They ate with the ravenous intensity of people who believed they were owed the world on a silver platter. I sat at the head of the table in my wheelchair, sipping water and watching them. I was not eating. My stomach was a knot of cold anticipation. Loretta cracked a crab leg with a violent snap, wiping grease onto a linen napkin that she would undoubtedly leave on the floor later. She looked at me, her eyes glassy with wine and satisfaction. This is more like it, Tiana, she said, pointing a claw at me. See, this is what family does. We forgive, we move on, we eat. I smiled. It was a tight, practiced expression that I had perfected in boardrooms while negotiating hostile takeovers. You are right, Mom, I said, my voice soft. I have been doing a lot of thinking while you were gone. Lying here alone gave me a lot of time to reflect on my priorities. Ebony looked up from her phone, where she was undoubtedly posting a picture of the food with a caption about hustling. Reflect on what she asked suspiciously. You are not going to start preaching about budgets again, are you? Because Chad and I are really close to a breakthrough with his startup idea. We just need capital. I shook my head slowly. No, Ebony. No budgets tonight. In fact, I wanted to talk about the opposite. I wanted to talk about abundance. The word hung in the air. Abundance. It was their favorite word. It was the magic spell that opened their wallets and shut down their brains. I saw Chad perk up. He set down his wineglass. What kind of abundance, he asked, leaning forward. Well, I continued, smoothing the silk of my robe over my knees. While you were in Aspen, I closed a deal. A very private equity deal that I have been working on for 6 months. It finally went through yesterday. Loretta's eyes widened. Is it big? It is significant, I lied. It is a game changer. And since I missed the trip, and since I missed the chance to bond with you all, I decided I wanted to do something special. I want to celebrate this win with the people who made me who I am. Chad grinned. He looked like a wolf who just spotted a wounded deer. That sounds amazing, Tiana. We should definitely celebrate. Maybe another trip. Hawaii. Or St. Bart's. No, I said, cutting him off gently. Not a trip. I want something more intimate, more meaningful. I want to host a dinner. A late Thanksgiving since we spent the actual holiday apart this year. Ebony groaned. A dinner. We just ate dinner, Tiana. That is boring. Not just any dinner, I said, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. I want to host it this Saturday, but not here. I want to host it at the house on Maple Drive, at Mom and Dad's house. Loretta frowned. My house. Why, your place is bigger. And I do not feel like cooking. You will not have to lift a finger, I assured her. I am hiring a full catering staff. White glove service. The best chef in Chicago. Decorators. Florists. I want to transform the house into a palace for one night. Loretta preened slightly at the mention of a palace, but she was still skeptical. Why my house, baby? Because it is the family seat, I said, appealing to her vanity. It is where we grew up. It is the heart of this family. And because the announcement I want to make, the financial gift I want to present, needs to happen on family ground. Gift. The word hit the table like a lightning bolt. Financial gift. Ebony repeated, her voice breathless. You are giving us a gift, like cash. I nodded. It is a distribution from the deal. I want to set everyone up. I want to make sure everyone is taken care of so we never have to worry about money again. Chad looked at Ebony, and I saw them exchange a look of pure, unadulterated greed. They were already spending the money in their heads. They were buying cars. They were buying watches. They were buying their way out of the mediocrity they had created for themselves. Well, Loretta said, sitting up straighter, adjusting her stolen diamond necklace. That is incredibly generous of you, Tiana. That is the Christian thing to do, sharing your blessings. There is just one catch, I said. The room went still. It is not really a catch, I amended. It is a condition. Since this is such a huge milestone, and since I want to honor the family publicly, I want this dinner to be an event. I want witnesses. Witnesses? Chad asked, his brow furrowing. Like lawyers? No, I laughed lightly. Like community. Mom, I want you to invite the bishop, and the first lady, and the board of deacons. Loretta gasped. The bishop? In my house? For dinner? Yes, I said. I want them to see how God has blessed us. I want them to see your home filled with abundance. I want you to give a testimony about faith and family. Loretta was practically vibrating. Her social standing in the church was her most prized possession. Hosting the bishop for a catered white-glove dinner funded by her rich daughter was her ultimate fantasy. Oh, Tiana, she breathed, clapping her hands. That is a wonderful idea. Sister Patterson will be so jealous. She has been trying to get the bishop to her house for Easter for years. And Ebony, I continued, turning to my sister. I want you to invite your network, but not just anyone. I want you to invite the people you are trying to impress. The people who think you are just a small-time poster. Let them see what real wealth looks like. Ebony nodded vigorously, her thumbs already flying across her phone screen. I am going to invite the brand ambassadors, and maybe that scout from the modeling agency. This is going to be huge content, Tiana. Huge. And Chad, I said, turning to my brother-in-law. He looked at me wary but eager. What about me? I know things have been tense with your parents, I said. I know they have been critical of your career path. Chad's face darkened. His parents, the Winstons, were old-money Chicago. White, conservative, and exceedingly wealthy. They despised Chad's lack of ambition and they barely tolerated his marriage to Ebony. They had cut him off financially 5 years ago, telling him to pull himself up by his bootstraps. Chad hated them, but he desperately wanted their approval and their inheritance. "Yeah, they are a nightmare," he muttered. "They think I am a loser." "Well," I said, leaning forward, "imagine their faces when they come to a dinner where you are presented with a massive check. Imagine them seeing you living the high life, surrounded by luxury, being honored by your family. It would prove them wrong, Chad. It would show them you made the right choice." Chad chewed his lip. "You think they would come? If you tell them there is a major financial announcement concerning their son, they will come, curiosity will bring them," I said. "And when they get there, we will make sure they see you winning." Chad grinned. A slow, arrogant grin. I would love to see the look on my dad's face. He always said I would end up broke. "So it is settled," I said, clapping my hands together softly. "Saturday night, 7 o'clock, Maple Drive. I will handle the vendors, you just handle the guests." We spent the next hour planning. They were animated, excited, drunk on the promise of future millions. They talked about what they would wear. They talked about the menu. Loretta insisted on lobster thermidor. Ebony wanted a champagne fountain. Chad demanded a Scotch tasting bar. I agreed to everything. Yes, lobster. Yes, champagne. Yes, 30-year-old Scotch. "Whatever you want," I said. "Nothing is too good for family." Around 10 o'clock they finally started to wind down. The wine bottles were empty. Their bellies were full. They stood up, stretching and yawning, ready to retreat to the bedrooms they had claimed in my penthouse. "I am going to bed," Loretta announced, grabbing the rest of the laundry bag. "Make sure the cleaners come early tomorrow, Tiana. I want the house spotless before I start decorating for Saturday." "We are staying here tonight, right?" Chad asked, looking at the guest room. "Of course," I said. "Stay as long as you need, until Saturday." They disappeared down the hallway, leaving me alone in the dining room with the wreckage of their feast. Crab shells littered the table. Wine stains dotted the tablecloth. It looked like a battlefield. Mrs. J stepped out of the shadows of the kitchen, where she had been silently washing dishes. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked over to me. "You are a dangerous woman, Miss Tiana," she whispered. "You just invited the devil to dinner and told him to bring his friends." I looked at the empty chair where Chad had sat. I thought about his parents. The Winstons were not just wealthy. They were judgmental. They were rigid. And they would be the perfect audience for what I was about to reveal. "And the bishop?" Mrs. J continued, shaking her head. "Loretta is going to be strutting like a peacock. You know that woman lives for the church's approval. If you humiliate her in front of the pulpit, she will never recover." "That is the point, Mrs. J," I said. "If I just took the house, she would spin a story. She would tell everyone I was ungrateful, that I kicked her out for no reason. She would play the victim. But if I expose her in front of the bishop, if I play the tapes in front of the deacons, she loses her shield, she loses her standing, she will have nowhere to hide." Mrs. J sighed. "And Chad's parents. They are the witnesses for the prosecution," I said. "Chad thinks he is getting a check. He is getting a reality check. When his parents see the theft, when they see the fraud, they will not just cut him off. They will disown him legally. He will have no safety net, no trust fund waiting for him when they die. He will be destitute." I pulled out the burner phone I had asked Mrs. J to buy for me earlier. I could not use my main line for what came next. I dialed a number from memory. Vance picked up immediately. "It is set," I said. "Saturday night. Maple Drive. The guest list is locked." "Who is coming?" Vance asked. "Everyone," I said. "The church, the in-laws, the neighbors. It is going to be a full house." "Good," Vance said. "I have the sheriff on standby. He agreed to execute the eviction order at 9 p.m. sharp. That gives you 2 hours for dinner and the show." 2 hours is plenty," I said. "And the police?" Vance asked. "I have a contact in the fraud division, Detective Miller. He is interested in the bank fraud charges against Ebony. He said if we can get her to admit to spending the money on tape, it makes his job easier." She will admit it, I said. She will be bragging about it. She thinks it is her money. Make sure the cameras are rolling, Vance said. Oh, they will be, I assured him. I hired a videographer. I told the family it is to document the celebration. They think they are starring in a reality show. In a way they are, Vance chuckled. It is just the series finale. I hung up the phone. I looked out the window at the Chicago skyline. The city was asleep, but I was wide awake. My back throbbed, a reminder of the metal holding me together. But the pain was distant now. It was background noise. The trap was set, the honey was poured, and the bears were already licking their lips, oblivious to the steel jaws hidden beneath the sweetness. I turned my wheelchair toward the bedroom. I had to rest. I had to heal. I had to look perfect for Saturday. Because when I rolled into that dining room on Maple Drive, I was not just going to be a daughter or a sister or a victim. I was going to be the executioner. And I was going to look fabulous doing it. The driveway of the house on Maple Drive was lined with luxury cars. A Bentley belonging to the bishop sat next to the vintage Mercedes of Chad's parents. My mother had insisted on valet parking. I watched from the window of the Sprinter van Mrs. J had rented for us as the young men in red vests ran back and forth parking cars for guests who had no idea they were attending a funeral for a reputation. I checked my reflection in the darkened glass. I was wearing a black dress, sharp and structural. My makeup was severe. I did not look like a woman recovering from surgery. I looked like a judge taking the bench. Ready, baby, Mrs. J asked. Her hand was steady on my shoulder. I am ready, I said. The ramp descended and I rolled my wheelchair onto the pavement of the home I had bought 10 years ago. The house was glowing. Every light was on. Music drifted out from the open windows, a smooth jazz playlist that Loretta believed sounded wealthy. We entered through the side door to avoid the fanfare. I wanted to observe before I engaged. I parked my chair in the shadows of the hallway looking into the sunken living room. It was a scene straight out of a Vanity Fair. Loretta was holding court in the center of the room. She was wearing the white mink coat, my white mink coat, indoors. The temperature in the room was a comfortable 70 degrees, but she had the coat draped over her shoulders like a queen's robe. She held a glass of champagne in one hand and was gesturing wildly with the other. The bishop stood in front of her, nodding solemnly. He was a large man with a booming laugh that usually filled the church, but tonight he seemed subdued, impressed by the display of opulence. You know, Bishop, Loretta was saying, her voice projected for the cheap seats in the back. Tiana has always been blessed with a gift for numbers. But it was my prayers that guided her. I prayed over her crib. I prayed over her business school applications. And now look, the Lord has returned that favor tenfold. This dinner, this house. It is all a testament to the power of a praying mother. I felt a bile rise in my throat. She was stealing my hard work and wrapping it in scripture. She was taking credit for the harvest in a field she had never plowed. Ebony was circulating the room with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, even though we had hired servers. She wanted to show off her new diamond bracelet. I watched her flash her wrist under the nose of the First Lady of the church. It is Cartier, Ebony lied smoothly. Chad bought it for me in Aspen. We had such a successful trip. We are looking at buying a vacation home there, actually. Just a little ski-in ski-out place. I gripped the armrests of my chair. The bracelet was from Tiffany's. It cost $4,000, and I paid for it. But the most interesting drama was happening in the corner by the fireplace. Chad stood there, drink in hand, sweating through his suit. He was talking to an older white couple who looked like they had smelled something bad. Mr. and Mrs. Winston. Chad's father was a man made of granite and disappointment. He looked around the room with a critical eye, assessing the crown molding, assessing the furniture, assessing his son. So this deal, Chad, his father asked, his voice cutting through the jazz music. You are saying it is liquid cash, no stocks, no options. Liquid, Dad. Chad said, nodding eagerly. Tiana closed a massive equity buyout. We are all getting a distribution. Ebony and I are going to use our share to seed my tech incubator. I told you I had a plan. I told you I just needed the capital. Mrs. Winston sipped her water. She looked at Ebony, who was currently taking a selfie with a lobster puff. And your wife? She asked, her tone frigid. What is her role in this incubator? Ebony is the face, Chad said quickly. She handles the branding, the lifestyle aspect. It is very modern, Mom. You have to understand the digital economy. Mr. Winston huffed. I understand hard work, Chad. I understand earning your way. I do not understand handouts. But if this money is real, maybe you can finally pay off your debts. Maybe you can finally stand on your own 2 feet. It is real, Chad insisted. It is happening tonight. Tiana is going to announce the numbers at dinner. You will see. I am finally in the big leagues. I watched Chad's face. He was terrified. He needed this lie to be true. He needed me to hand him a check so he could buy his father's respect. He was gambling everything on my generosity. A generosity he had spat on 2 weeks ago. It was time. Mrs. J pushed me forward. The rubber wheels of my chair transitioned from the hardwood of the hall to the plush carpet of the living room. The conversation died down as I rolled into the light. The room fell silent. There she is, Loretta cried out, clapping her hands. The woman of the hour. My daughter Tiana. She rushed over, the mink coat swinging. She leaned down to kiss my cheek but stopped inches away, afraid to smudge her makeup. You look tired, baby, she whispered, her smile fixed for the audience. But do not worry. You just sit there and look rich. I will do the talking. She straightened up and addressed the room. Everyone please, dinner is served. We have prepared a feast fit for kings. The group moved toward the dining room. It was a long mahogany table set for 20. Crystal stemware sparkled under the chandelier. The centerpieces were white orchids cascading down like waterfalls. It looked expensive. It looked perfect. I was wheeled to the head of the table. Usually my father sat there. But tonight, Bernard sat to my right, looking small and nervous. He knew something was wrong. He had seen the look in my eyes when they came home, but he was too weak to stop the train. Loretta sat at the other end opposite me. The bishop sat to her right. Chad and his parents were on my left. Ebony was next to Chad, nervously adjusting her dress. The servers brought out the first course. Lobster bisque with sherry cream. Grace, the bishop boomed. Let us give thanks. He prayed for 10 minutes. He prayed for the food. He prayed for the house. He prayed for the continued financial success of the Williams family. He thanked God for Tiana's generous spirit. I kept my eyes open. I watched them, all heads bowed, thinking they were about to be blessed. They had no idea they were sitting at the Last Supper. When the prayer ended, the wine was poured. It was a Screaming Eagle Cabernet. $3,000 a bottle. Chad's father looked at the label and raised an eyebrow. Impressive, he muttered. Chad beamed. Only the best, Dad. Tiana knows her wine. We ate. The food was delicious, rich, and decadent. But the conversation was starving. It was filled with empty calories. Loretta bragged about her charity work, which consisted of giving away my old clothes. Ebony talked about her followers, which she had bought. Chad talked about synergy and disruption, using buzzwords he did not understand. I said nothing. I just smiled and nodded. I was the silent partner. The bank. Finally, the main course was cleared. The servers placed dessert plates in front of everyone. Chocolate soufflé with gold dust. Chad tapped his spoon against his wine glass. The sharp ting-ting-ting cut through the chatter. All right, everyone, he said, standing up. He swayed slightly. He was drunk. I hate to interrupt dessert, but we have all been waiting for the main event. Tiana has an announcement. He looked at me, his eyes hungry. Tiana, take it away. Tell them the good news. The room went quiet. The bishop leaned forward. Mr. Winston crossed his arms. Loretta clasped her hands together in a prayerful pose. I signaled to Mrs. J. She handed me a remote control. I did not stand up. I stayed in my chair. The metal brace around my waist was tight, keeping me upright. "Thank you everyone for coming," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. It was the voice I used when I fired people. I looked at my mother. I looked at my sister. I looked at Chad. "We are here tonight to talk about success." I continued. "We are here to talk about what it takes to live this lifestyle. The clothes, the trips, the houses." Loretta nodded encouragingly. "Tell them, baby. Tell them how hard you work." "I work very hard," I agreed. "But lately I have realized that my family works even harder. You have been working overtime." Chad grilled, thinking I was complimenting him. "You see, I went on success leaves a trail. It leaves a paper trail. And tonight, instead of just telling you about our wealth, I wanted to show you. I wanted to be completely transparent. Because transparency is the key to any good partnership." I pressed the button on the remote. At the far end of the dining room, a motorized screen descended from the ceiling. It blocked the view of the garden. A high-lumen projector hummed to life. A beam of light cut through the dim room, hitting the white screen. The first slide appeared. It was not a pie chart of profits. It was not a graph of growth. It was a bank statement. The heading was bold: American Express Platinum Business. Below it was a list of transactions. The Aspen Peak Resort, $15,000. Delta Airlines, $4,500. Montclair, $2,100. The room was confused. The bishop squinted at the screen. "What is this?" Loretta asked, her laugh nervous and high-pitched. "Is this the investment portfolio?" "No, Mom," I said, my voice turning to steel. "These are the receipts." I clicked the remote. The next slide appeared. It was a blown-up photo from Instagram, the one of Ebony and Chad in the hot tub. Next to it was a receipt from the hotel bar. 4 bottles of Dom Perignon, $2,000, and below that was a text message thread. It was a text from Chad to his best friend Mark. I had subpoenaed his phone records through a private investigator Vance used. The text read on the screen in 10-foot-tall letters. "Bro, these black folks are so stupid. I just tell the old lady she looks good and she gives me the card. I am bleeding the sister dry. She is a cripple right now anyway. I am going to ride this gravy train until the wheels fall off. Then I am dumping Ebony and taking the cash." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb that had just detonated, but the sound wave had not hit yet. I looked at Chad. His face had gone the color of ash. He looked at his father. Mr. Winston was reading the text message. His lips were a thin white line. I clicked the remote again. The next slide. A photo of my mother in the mink coat. The caption read, "Blessed." Next to it was the security camera footage from my penthouse hallway. It showed my mother walking out of my closet holding the coat bag. It was time-stamped 2 hours after my surgery. And next to that was an audio file icon. I pressed play. My mother's voice filled the dining room loud and clear. It was the voicemail she had left her friend Sister Patterson the day they left for Aspen. "Girl, I am so glad to get out of there. Tiana is whining about her back again. She wants me to stay and change her bedpans. Please. I did my time raising her. She has money. Let her hire a nurse. I am going to Aspen. I deserve this. If she dies, she dies. At least the life insurance is paid up. If she dies, she dies." The bishop gasped. He actually gasped. He looked at Loretta like she had just grown horns. Loretta was frozen. Her hand was over her mouth. Her eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit, looking for an excuse. But I was not done. I clicked the remote one more time. This slide was a legal document. It was a copy of the withdrawal slip from the trust fund. Next to it was a handwriting analysis report. It showed 2 signatures, mine and Ebony's. The text below read, "Probability of forgery 99.9%, and below that a police report number. Filed today. Charges wire fraud. Identity theft. Grand larceny. Suspect Ebony Winston." Ebony screamed. It was a sharp, piercing sound. She stood up, knocking her chair over. She shrieked. "You investigated me!" I looked at her. I looked at the sister I had carried on my back for 30 years. I did not investigate you, Ebony, I said. I audited you, and you failed. I turned to Chad's parents. Mr. and Mrs. Winston, I said, I am sorry you had to see this, but I thought you should know who you are sitting with. Your son is not an entrepreneur. He is a thief, and he is spending stolen money to buy your love. Mr. Winston stood up. He did not look at Chad. He looked at me. Thank you for the meal, he said. His voice was shaking with rage. We have seen enough. He turned to Chad. Do not call me, he said. Do not come to the house. You are cut off. Permanently. Chad lunged for his father. Dad, wait. It is a lie. She manipulated the texts. Mr. Winston shoved him away. Get your hands off me. You are a disgrace. The Winstons walked out. They did not look back. Now it was just us, the family, the bishop, and the truth. Loretta stood up. She was trembling. Tiana, how could you? In front of the bishop, in front of everyone. You humiliated us. You humiliated yourselves, I said. I just turned on the lights. I pressed the remote one last time. The final slide appeared. It was a document. A notice to vacate. Address 4102 Maple Drive. Tenant Bernard and Loretta Williams. Time to vacate immediate. Reason emergency eviction due to criminal activity and financial endangerment. The room was spinning for them. But for me, it was finally standing still. I looked at my mother. The mink coat had slipped off her shoulders and lay on the floor in a heap. This is my house, I said. My name is on the deed. And as of this morning, it has been sold. Sold, Loretta whispered. Sold, I said. To a developer. They are tearing it down next week. You have 24 hours to get your things and get out. The bishop stood up. He adjusted his suit. He looked at Loretta with a profound sadness. Sister Williams, he said, I think we need to have a talk about your position on the deacon board. But not tonight. Tonight I need to go pray. For your soul. He walked out. The trap had snapped shut. The honey was gone. There was only steel left. I looked at the wreckage of my family. They were crying. They were shouting. They were blaming each other. But I did not hear them. I only heard the sound of chains breaking. I signaled to Mrs. J. Get the car, I said. We are done here. I turned my wheelchair and rolled away from the table. I left them with the lobster shells and the cold soufflé and the ruin of their own making. I did not look back. The room was vibrating with the aftershocks of the first revelation. But I was not done. I was just getting started. I swiveled my wheelchair toward Chad. He was still frozen in his chair, his face a mask of pale terror. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Winston, were staring at him with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. They were beginning to realize that their son was not the prodigal entrepreneur he claimed to be. Chad, I said, my voice slicing through the murmurs. You have been very quiet. Usually you have so much to say about my finances, about how I should spend my money, about how cheap I am. Chad swallowed hard. Tiana, please, do not do this. Not in front of them. He gestured frantically toward his parents. It was pathetic. He was a 30-year-old man terrified of Mommy and Daddy finding out he was a fraud. I am afraid it is too late for that, I said. We are committed to transparency tonight, remember? And I think your parents deserve to know exactly where their son has been spending his time. And my money. I clicked the remote. The screen flickered and a new image appeared. It was a receipt, but it was not for ski lift tickets or truffles. The logo at the top read, The Velvet Touch Massage and Spa. The amount was $1,200. The itemized list read, Private Room, 2-hour special. Champagne service. The date was last Tuesday. The time was 11 p.m. Ebony frowned. She squinted at the screen. Wait a minute. Last Tuesday. You told me you were at a business mixer with the resort investors. You said it went late. I looked at my sister. For the first time in her life, she looked small. The veneer of the confident influencer was cracking, revealing the insecure girl underneath. He was not at a mixer, Ebony, I said. He was at a gentleman's club. A very expensive gentleman's club located 20 minutes outside of Aspen. And he put it on my corporate card listed as client entertainment. Mrs. Winston let out a small gasped sound, clutching her pearls. The bishop looked away embarrassed. Chad stood up, knocking his knee against the table. That is a lie. That is a legitimate massage place. My back hurt from skiing. For $1,200 at 11 at night, I asked, raising an eyebrow. Does a back massage usually come with a bottle of Dom Perignon sent to a private room? Ebony stood up slowly. Her eyes were locked on Chad. You went to a strip club. On our vacation. While I was asleep. Chad stammered. It was for networking, babe. You do not understand business. I clicked the remote again. The next slide was a receipt from a jeweler in Denver. $3,000. For a diamond tennis bracelet. Ebony's face lit up for a split second. A reflex. She loved diamonds. She looked down at her wrist, but she was wearing the Tiffany bracelet she had bought herself with my money. You bought me a bracelet, she asked Hope, warring with confusion. Is this a surprise? I laughed. It was a cold, dark sound. It is a surprise, all right, Ebony, I said. But not for you. Look at the shipping address. Ebony looked. The address was not our penthouse. It was not Mom's house. It was an apartment complex in downtown Chicago. Who lives at 404 Lakeview Drive? Ebony asked, her voice trembling. Chad's face went from pale to beet red. He looked like he was going to explode. Tiana, stop. I am warning you. I ignored him. I looked at Ebony. That is the address of a woman named Sarah Jenkins, I said. She is a bottle girl at the club Chad goes to when he tells you he is at the gym. They have been seeing each other for 6 months. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum sucking all the air out of the space. Ebony looked at Chad. Her eyes were wide, filled with a betrayal so deep it looked physical. You are cheating on me, she whispered, with my sister's money. Chad looked around the room, looking for an ally, looking for an escape. He found neither. It did not mean anything. He blurted out the classic defense of the guilty. She means nothing to me. I clicked the remote one last time. This is the text you sent to your best friend Mark about your wife, I said. The one you sent the night you bought that bracelet. The text appeared on the screen, massive and undeniable. Bro, you should see the rock I got Sarah. She is going to freak. I had to use the sister's card, but who cares? These black folks are so stupid. I just need to flatter old lady Loretta and she hands over the keys to the kingdom. My wife is useless. She is just a label, a trophy with no brain. I am just biding my time until the sister kicks the bucket or I secure the bag. Then I am gone. The room erupted. It was not a gradual build. It was an explosion. Loretta screamed. It was a primal sound of pure offense. She stood up, knocking her chair over. Old lady, she shrieked. You called me an old lady. After I treated you like a son. After I let you drive my car. After I fed you. But Ebony was faster. She launched herself across the table. She did not look like an influencer anymore. She looked like a woman possessed. She grabbed a crystal wine glass and hurled it at Chad's head. It missed him by inches, shattering against the wall behind him, showering the expensive wallpaper with red wine and glass shards. You are useless, Ebony screamed, lunging at him. Her nails were out claws aimed for his eyes. You called me useless. I made you. I gave you this life. Chad tried to back away, but he tripped over his own feet and fell backward into the server who was holding a tray of coffee. Hot coffee splashed over his suit. He yelped, scrambling on the floor like a crab. Get off me, you crazy bitch, he yelled, kicking out at Ebony. Mr. Winston stood up. His face was gray. He looked at his son rolling on the floor, covered in coffee and wine, fighting with his wife. He walked over to Chad. He did not help him up. He looked down at him with a disgust so profound it chilled the room. "Get up," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried more weight than Loretta's screaming. Chad scrambled to his feet, wiping coffee from his face. "Dad, listen. She hacked my phone. It is out of context." "Out of context," Mr. Winston repeated. "You called your wife useless. You called her family stupid. You stole money. You cheated. And you used racial slurs against the people who have been housing and feeding you. It was just talk, Dad. Locker room talk. You are a disgrace," Mr. Winston said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He ripped a check out of it. It was blank. He tore it in half. Then he tore it in half again. "I was going to give you this tonight," he said, throwing the confetti of paper at Chad's feet. "I was going to help you with your incubator. I thought you had finally grown up. I see I was wrong. You are not a businessman, Chad. You are a grifter, and you are a racist." Mrs. Winston stood up. She was trembling. She looked at Loretta. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I am so incredibly sorry. We did not raise him this way." Loretta was hyperventilating, clutching her chest. My mink coat was on the floor, trampled in the scuffle. "Get him out!" Loretta gasped, pointing a shaking finger at Chad. "Get him out of my house." "It is not your house, Mom," I reminded her, my voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "But I agree. Get him out." Chad looked around. He saw his parents turning their backs on him. He saw Ebony being held back by the bishop, sobbing and screaming. He saw his free ride evaporating into smoke. And then he snapped. The mask fell off. The charming, deferential son-in-law vanished. In his place was a snarling, cornered rat. "Fine," he spat, straightening his stained jacket. "You want me to leave? I will leave. I am sick of this place anyway. I am sick of walking on eggshells around you people." He turned to Loretta. "You are an old lady," he sneered. "A vain, loudmouth old lady who thinks she is royalty because her daughter made some money. You are a joke, Loretta. Everyone laughs at you. The whole church laughs at you." Loretta let out a strangled cry, collapsing into her chair. He turned to Ebony. "And you are a joke too. Influencer. You have 5,000 followers and half of them are bots I bought for you. You do not have a brand. You have a shopping addiction and a narcissism problem. You are boring, Ebony. You are empty. That is why I cheated. Because at least Sarah has a personality." Ebony wailed, a sound of pure heartbreak, burying her face in the bishop's suit jacket. He turned to me. "And you, Tiana, you think you are so smart. You think you won. You are just a cripple with a checkbook. No one loves you. They only love what you buy them. You are going to die alone in that penthouse and your cats are going to eat you." I looked at him. I did not feel anger. I felt pity. "I may die alone, Chad," I said, "but I will die with my dignity. And I will die in a house I own." "Where are you going to sleep tonight?" Chad sneered. "I have friends. I have Sarah. Sarah lives in a studio apartment," I said, checking my notes. "And according to my investigator, she thinks you are a venture capitalist. Wait until she finds out you are unemployed and homeless. I wonder how long that romance will last." Chad's eyes narrowed. "You ruined everything." "No, Chad," I said. "I just stopped paying for the illusion." "Get out!" Mr. Winston roared, pointing at the door. "Before I call the police myself." Chad looked at his father. He opened his mouth to speak, but saw the stone in the old man's eyes. He knew it was over. "Screw you all," he yelled. He turned and stormed out of the dining room. We heard the front door slam so hard the windows rattled. Silence descended on the room again. But it was not peaceful. It was the silence of a battlefield after the slaughter. Ebony was sobbing quietly, a broken heap on the floor. Loretta was staring at the wall, her eyes unfocused, muttering about her reputation. Mr. and Mrs. Winston looked like they wanted to crawl into a hole and die. I looked at Mrs. J. She gave me a small nod. The first head had rolled, but the execution was not over. I turned my wheelchair toward my mother. "Now, Mom," I said softly, "let us talk about that voicemail." The room was heavy with the stench of ruin. Chad was gone, but his toxicity lingered in the air like smoke. My sister Ebony was still curled on the floor, weeping into the carpet, not for her marriage, but for the lifestyle she had just lost. My father Bernard sat at the table staring into his empty wine glass as if the answers to his failures were swimming in the dregs. But my mother Loretta was a survivor. She was a cockroach in a mink coat. She stood up, smoothing her dress, her eyes darting to the bishop who was watching the scene with a look of biblical judgment. She saw her social standing slipping away and she scrambled to catch it. "Bishop, please," she pleaded, her voice trembling with a manufactured fragility. "You have to understand. We were deceived. That boy Chad, he was a devil. He manipulated us. He manipulated my poor Ebony. We did not know he was stealing. We thought he was a businessman. We are victims here, Bishop. Just like Tiana." She turned to me, her eyes hard and demanding, urging me to play along. "Tell him, Tiana. Tell him we did not know. We love you, baby. We would never hurt you." This was all Chad. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had birthed me. She was desperate. She was terrified. But she was not sorry. She was just trying to save her seat on the deacon board. I signaled to Mrs. J. She handed me the remote again. "I am glad you brought that up, Mom," I said, my voice cutting through her performance. "You say you love me. You say you would never hurt me. You say Chad was the only villain." Loretta nodded vigorously. "Yes, baby, he was a snake, but we are blood, we stick together." I looked at the bishop. "Bishop Patterson," I said, "I have one more thing to show you, because my mother has a very short memory. She seems to have forgotten a phone call she made the day she left for Aspen." Loretta froze. Her hands went to her throat, clutching the stolen diamond necklace. "What phone call?" she whispered. "The one you made to Sister Patterson," I said. "You thought I was asleep. You thought I couldn't hear you. But my security system records all audio in the penthouse living room, and you were standing right next to the sensor." I pressed the button. The screen behind me changed. It showed a soundwave file. I pressed play. The audio was crisp. It was high definition. There was no mistaking the voice. "Girl, I am so glad to get out of there. Tiana is whining about her back again. She wants me to stay and change her bedpans. Please, I did my time raising her. She has money. Let her hire a nurse. I am going to Aspen. I deserve this." The voice paused. Then came the line that had haunted me for 2 weeks. The line that had turned my heart to stone. "If she dies, she dies. At least the life insurance is paid up. And Ebony gets the penthouse, so it is a win-win." The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a grave. The bishop stood up slowly. He was a man who had seen sinners of all kinds. He had seen thieves and liars and adulterers. But he looked at Loretta now as if he was looking at something that had crawled out of a sewer. Loretta tried to speak. "Bishop, I was just venting. I was stressed." "Stop?" The bishop's voice was low, but it carried the weight of God. "Just stop talking, Loretta." He walked over to where she stood. He looked down at her. "I have sat at your table," he said. "I have eaten your food. I have let you lead the prayer circle. I thought you were a woman of faith, but I see now that was a costume." He shook his head, his eyes filled with disgust. "You left your child to die," he said, "and you hoped for the payout. That is not a mistake, Loretta. That is a demon." He turned to me. "Sister Tiana," he said, his voice softening. "I am so sorry. The church will be praying for your healing. But we will not be praying for your mother's reputation." He turned back to Loretta. "Do not come to service on Sunday," he said. "Do not come to the deacon meeting. In fact, do not come back until you have found Jesus, because he is certainly not in this house." The bishop walked out. The heavy front door closed with a finality that shook the windows. Loretta collapsed into her chair. She looked small. She looked old. The mask had been ripped off, and underneath was just a greedy, frightened woman. "Why, Tiana?" she whispered. Why would you do this to me? I am your mother. I rolled my wheelchair closer to the table. You are not a mother, I said. You are a beneficiary. And your policy just got cancelled. The front door opened again. But it was not the bishop returning. It was Arthur Vance, and he was not alone. Behind him walked two uniformed sheriff's deputies and a man in a windbreaker holding a clipboard. Vance walked into the dining room, his briefcase swinging by his side. He looked at the wreckage of the dinner party with a cool detachment. "Good evening, everyone," he said. "I apologize for the interruption. My name is Arthur Vance. I am Tiana's attorney." My father Bernard looked up. He looked terrified. "What is this?" he asked. "What is happening?" Vance placed his briefcase on the table, pushing aside a plate of half-eaten lobster. He opened it and pulled out a stack of papers with red stamps on them. "This," he said, holding up the first document, "is a notice of sale and immediate transfer of deed." He looked at my parents. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, this property located at 1402 Maple Drive has been sold to a private development firm. The transaction is complete. The title has been transferred." Loretta stood up, her legs shaking. "Sold. You cannot sell my house. I have lived here for 10 years. "It was never your house," Vance said calmly. "Tiana bought it. Tiana paid the mortgage. Tiana paid the taxes. Tiana paid the insurance. You were guests, and guests can be asked to leave." He handed the paper to the man in the windbreaker. "This gentleman is the representative for the new owners," Vance continued. "He has instructions to secure the property immediately." "Secure the property," Bernard stammered. "What does that mean?" "It means you are being evicted," Vance said. He pulled out the second document. "This is an emergency eviction order signed by Judge Harrison this afternoon. It cites criminal activity on the premises and financial endangerment of the property owner. It grants immediate possession to the buyer." He looked at his watch. "You have 24 hours to remove your personal effects. Anything left in the house after that time will be considered abandoned property and will be disposed of by the hauling crew arriving tomorrow evening." 24 hours, Loretta shrieked. "But we have nowhere to go. Our things are here. My furniture, my clothes. You should have thought about that before you stole $15,000 from your landlord," Vance said. He signaled to the deputies. "Gentlemen, if you please." The deputies stepped forward. One of them pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metallic click of the ratchet sounded like a gunshot in the room. "Ebony Winston," the deputy said, looking down at my sister, who was still sobbing on the floor. "Please stand up and place your hands behind your back." Ebony looked up, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. "What?" she gasped. "Why?" "You are under arrest," the deputy said, hauling her to her feet. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, bank fraud, and identity theft," Ebony screamed. It was a high, thin sound of pure terror. "Mom!" she wailed. "Mom, help me! They are hurting me!" Loretta lunged forward. "Get your hands off her! She is a good girl. It was a mistake." The second deputy stepped in front of Loretta, blocking her path. "Loretta Williams," he said, "you are also under arrest." "Me?" Loretta gasped. "For what? I did not sign those checks." "No," the deputy said. "But you are named as a co-conspirator in the credit card fraud case. You knowingly utilized goods and services obtained through stolen financial instruments, possession of stolen property, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny." He reached for her arm. "Turn around, ma'am." "No." Loretta screamed, struggling as the deputy spun her around. "No, you cannot do this. I am a deaconess. I am a mother. Tiana, tell them. Tell them it is a misunderstanding." She looked at me, her eyes wild with panic. "Tiana, baby, please, stop this. I will do anything. I will pay you back. Just tell them to stop." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had left me on the floor. I looked at the woman who had said, "If she dies, she dies." I took a sip of water. It was cool and refreshing. "I cannot do that, Mom," I said. It is out of my hands. It is the law. And you taught me to always follow the rules, right? The deputy clicked the cuffs onto Loretta's wrists. She slumped her fight, leaving her instantly. She looked at the handcuffs, then at me, then at the beautiful dining room she would never see again. Bernard stood up. He was trembling. "What about me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Am I going to jail too?" Vance looked at him. "Not today, Mr. Williams. Your name was not on the credit card transactions, and you did not sign the forged bank slips. You are just guilty of being a coward who let his wife and daughter rob his other child blind." Bernard slumped back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. But Vance continued, "You are named in the eviction. You have to leave. Tonight." The deputies began to march Loretta and Ebony toward the door. Ebony was wailing, begging Chad to come back and save her, begging me to have mercy. Loretta was sobbing, praying loudly, asking Jesus to intervene. I watched them go. I watched my mother being led out of the house she loved more than she loved me. I watched my sister being dragged away to a cell where there were no ring lights and no filters. When the door closed behind them, the house fell silent. The man in the windbreaker cleared his throat. "Miss Tiana, I will begin the inventory of the fixtures. We will have the locks changed within the hour." "Thank you," I said. I turned to my father. He was weeping softly, his shoulders shaking. "Dad," I said. He looked up. His eyes were red and old. "Tiana, I am sorry. I should have stopped them. I knew. I knew they were spending too much. I knew you were hurting. I was weak." "Yes," I said. "You were weak, and your weakness almost killed me." I signaled Mrs. J. She turned my chair toward the door. "You have to go, Dad. The sheriff is waiting to lock up." "Where will I go?" he asked. "I do not know," I said. "But you have a car, and you have your freedom. That is more than Mom and Ebony have right now." I rolled past him. I rolled past the table covered in expensive food that would go to waste. I rolled past the orchids and the crystal. I rolled out the front door and down the ramp. The night air was cold, but it felt clean. It felt like purification. Mrs. J helped me into the van. She secured my chair. "You did it," she said softly. "You really did it." I looked out the window. I saw my father walking out of the house carrying a single suitcase. He looked lost. I did not feel happy. I did not feel joy. But I felt light. The weight of their expectations, the weight of their greed, the weight of their cruelty, it was all gone, left behind in a house that no longer belonged to anyone. "Drive, Mrs. J," I said. "Take me home." We pulled away, leaving the house on Maple Drive dark and empty. The sale sign was already up on the lawn. Sold. It was the most beautiful word I had ever seen. The night of the eviction was chaos. The neighbors watched from their windows as the sheriff escorted my family off the property. Loretta was wearing her mink coat over her pajamas, screaming that she was a woman of God, and this was illegal. Ebony was dragging a suitcase with a broken wheel, her mascara running down her face like war paint. Chad did not even help them. The moment they stepped onto the sidewalk, he hailed a cab. I saw him say something to Ebony, something that made her crumble to the ground. Later I learned he had served her with divorce papers right there on the curb. He told her he was not going to prison for a woman who could not even keep a roof over his head. He left her there, sobbing on top of her luggage. My father Bernard walked away alone. He carried one small duffel bag. He did not look back. He did not look at Loretta or Ebony. He just walked into the darkness, a man finally free of the burden of his own cowardice. I watched it all from the back of the van. I did not feel pity. I did not feel guilt. I felt like a surgeon who had just cut out a tumor. It was messy, it was bloody, but it was necessary for survival. The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings and logistical untangling. Vance was ruthless. He secured the convictions. Ebony took a plea deal. 5 years probation and restitution. She avoided prison, but she would be paying me back for the rest of her life. Every paycheck she ever earned would be garnished. She was working at a diner now, the same diner she used to make fun of. She was serving pancakes to people she used to try to impress. Loretta avoided charges by claiming ignorance and throwing Ebony under the bus. She told the police Ebony had stolen the card and she thought it was a gift. It was a lie, but it was a lie that saved her from jail. It did not save her from poverty, though. With the house sold and her reputation in tatters, she ended up in a state-subsidized senior living facility. It was clean, it was safe, but it was small, and it was lonely. The church ladies did not visit, the bishop did not call. She was just another old woman with a story nobody wanted to hear. As for me, I disappeared. I sold the penthouse. I sold the furniture. I sold the memories. I took the money and I bought a new life. 1 year later. The sun was setting over Lake Geneva. The water was calm, a mirror reflecting the oranges and purples of the sky. I sat on the balcony of my new home. It was a sprawling estate hidden away in the trees. It was quiet here. No sirens, no traffic, no screaming. I was not in a wheelchair anymore. I was sitting in a teak lounge chair, my legs stretched out in front of me. I flexed my toes. I rotated my ankles. The pain was gone. The metal in my back was still there, but it was a part of me now. It was the steel spine I had always needed. I took a sip of my iced tea. It was sweet and cold. Mrs. J had made it. She lived in the guest cottage on the property. She was not my nurse anymore. She was my family. She was the grandmother I never had, the mother I deserved. I heard the sliding glass door open behind me. Mrs. J stepped out. She was wearing a floral caftan and holding a plate of fresh fruit. "You are thinking too hard, child," she said, setting the plate down on the table next to me. "I can hear your gears turning from inside the house." I smiled. "I was just thinking about how quiet it is." "It is peaceful," she agreed. "That is what you paid for. Peace is expensive, but it is worth every penny." I picked up a slice of melon. It was juicy and ripe. "Do you ever wonder about them?" I asked. Mrs. J sat down in the chair next to me. She looked out at the lake. "Sometimes," she said, "I wonder if they learned anything. But then I remember who they are. People like that do not learn Tiana. They just find new victims, or they consume themselves." She was right. I knew she was right. But sometimes late at night I still wondered. I wondered if my mother missed me, or if she just missed my money. I wondered if Ebony ever looked at her life and realized she had destroyed it with her own greed. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a burner phone. Only Vance, Mrs. J, and my new doctors had the number, or so I thought. I picked it up. The screen lit up with a notification. Blocked call. It was the 66th time this number had tried to call me in the last month. I knew who it was. It was Loretta. She had found a way to get a phone. She had found a way to track me down. She was persistent, I would give her that. I stared at the screen. I could answer it. I could hear her voice one last time. I could hear her beg. I could hear her scream. I could hear her try to manipulate me with Bible verses and guilt trips. But why would I do that? Why would I invite the poison back in? I looked at Mrs. J. She was watching me. She did not say anything. She just waited. She trusted me. I pressed the side button on the phone. The ringing stopped. The screen went black. I blocked the number, not just sent to voicemail. Blocked, permanently. I set the phone down. I took a deep breath of the fresh lake air. It smelled like pine needles and water. It smelled like freedom. Mrs. J smiled. "Good girl." We sat there as the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the sky into a canvas of stars. The first fireflies of the season were coming out, blinking in the grass like tiny diamonds. I thought about the girl I used to be. The girl who crawled on the floor begging for help. The girl who thought love was something you had to buy. That girl was dead. She died in that penthouse. The woman sitting here was different. She was harder, yes. She was scarred, but she was whole. She was standing on her own 2 feet, and she was never going to let anyone knock her down again. I raised my glass of tea to the moon. To us, I whispered. To us, Mrs. J echoed, clinking her glass against mine. And to the silence I added, the beautiful, expensive silence. We drank. The tea was sweet. The night was cool. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Alone, but not lonely. Broken, but healed. Rich, but not just in money. I was rich in the one thing they could never steal from me. I was free. Tiana's harrowing journey reveals a brutal truth: unconditional love cannot be purchased. For years, she mistook financial exploitation for familial bonding, only realizing her true worth when she stopped paying for their affection. The story illustrates that shared DNA does not guarantee loyalty. True family is defined by who stands beside you in your darkest hours, not who drinks champagne on your tab. Ultimately, setting boundaries isn't an act of cruelty, but a necessary survival strategy. Tiana's freedom came not from her wealth, but from the courage to sever ties with those who valued her wallet more than her life. If you've ever had to choose your peace over toxic family loyalty, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of survivors.